Assalamu alaikum. We can have everyone's attention, please. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. Okay, we're about to open up, inshallah. If everyone can gather just a little bit closer. I know we're kind of spread out, but if you can gather just a tad bit closer for the opening. This is the opening of the second annual Islamic School Fair at Expo. Alhamdulillah. My name is Bilal Hassan. I'm a volunteer for the Education Committee. I'm going to introduce to you all the group that's going to open up with Al-Fatiha. Brother, can you remind me of the names of the students? Ustad Ziyad. Ziyad and his students will open up with Surah Al-Fatiha first, and then we'll bring on the Majlis convener, inshallah.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir-Rahim. مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين
آمين.
In the name of Allah, the entirely merciful, the especially merciful. All praise is due to Allah, Lord of the worlds, the entirely merciful, the especially merciful, the King of the Day of Judgment. It is you we worship and you we ask for help. Guide us to the straight path, the path of those upon whom you have bestowed favor, not of those who have earned your anger or of those who are astray.
Ameen. Thank you. Shukran. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, brother. Thank you so much. Alhamdulillah. Now we will have our welcome to this welcoming remarks by the Majlis Amir Imam Farid Rasul.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Welcome. Inshallah, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa la sharika lahu wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasulullah sallallahu. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has favored us with the greatest gift that we can have in being living on earth. He's favored us with making us the Muslims. So no matter what happens in this world, if you may gain all the wealth in the world that you can gain all the accumulations in the material world that you can gain. And by the time it's time for you to go back to Allah, you'll find that the greatest gift you've received on this earth is that Allah made you Muslim, made you know Him that you came from and Him that you're returning back to. So we're thankful that Allah made us the Muslims. At the same time, by making us the Muslims, He's put an obligation on us, and we know that obligation is that we're supposed to seek knowledge from the cradle to the grave. And so it's very, very important and very demanding on us that we be those who have a real commitment to education. Because we know that our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was the one who was the unlettered prophet, which means that he was the one that they said couldn't read, couldn't write, and so therefore at the same time, Allah used him to be able to bring the message that was for all mankind to the forefront. And at the same time, because he was the one who was unlettered, he had a concern for the humanity not being unlettered and not being unlearned. So even to the point that when they had captives in battle, first of all, before I say that, let me say this, that the Prophet, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the first thing he revealed to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was Iqra. He says, Iqra, read, proclaim. And the Prophet's response was, I cannot read. And so then it was, well, proclaim and read in the name of your Lord. And so therefore then from that point on, he continued to recite what was given to him. But at the same time, that means that the reading was important. And the Prophet ﷺ didn't lose sight of that. So even when they had captives of war, so right now we can hear about, they talk about having prisoner exchanges and things like that in different countries. So that are at war. We know that the Prophet ﷺ, the Muslims were at war during those times, and they had captives. And so one of the things that could free a captive was not to give another captive. So they have like prisoner exchanges. So you give us some of your prisoners for the ones that you have of us, and we'll give you your prisoners back that we have of yours. So during those times, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, listen, if you just teach 10 Muslims to read, you're free as a captive from us. Which means that must have been very, very important. It must have been very, very valuable. And to the Prophet ﷺ, it was very important that his community become literate and they become learned. And that also goes to the point because the Prophet ﷺ said that one learned Muslim is harder on the shaitan than 1,000 ignorant worshippers. So this means that education is very, very important to us. At the same time, we live in an environment where they want to make you educate you with so many things, and so many things they educate us with is not valuable. And so the Prophet ﷺ also said that, to gain knowledge that's of no benefit is like having a treasure. You have a treasure of all this wealth, and none of it was spent for the sake of Allah. So it's useless. So we want to be those that we have a knowledge that we see that it's important for us to have knowledge and gain knowledge, and to seek it all the way to the cradle, all the way to the grave, but at the same time we want it to be beneficial knowledge. And inshallah, so the efforts of us coming together and seeing that what we're starting with, what we're working with, and know how to grow this here, this terrain that we have of those Islamic educators, and that we see ourselves working together to bring that availability to the community at large is very, very important. So we pray Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He bless all of your efforts. We want to thank everybody for coming here today to do this. And remember, everything starts with something small. Everything starts with something small. They said there was a question, I was in a session last night, and the question came up. Said somebody posed the question, do you think that Islam will ever dominate in America? And so immediately the person was looking for somebody to say no. But the answer cannot be no. Because the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if you look at this, when Allah revealed the revelation to him, how many Muslims were there in Arabia? 0. And he took the message home to his wife, Khadija radiallahu anha, and she became the first one to accept. So then there were 2 of them. But so the point is that in America we have more than 0 that we're working with, that we're starting with. But over time, the efforts that we're putting forward will keep on going forward. Inshallah, you'll see it multiply. But Islam will make its inroads even into America. And you and I are the ones who are here, and you and I are the ones that Allah gives the ability to be able to have such a benefit of being here, to be the ones that are inviting the others to this way of life, by way of not just what we say, but also by way of what we do. So inshallah, this here effort that you're making now is the confirmation of what you're doing, and inshallah, may Allah reward you for doing it, because, if you intend a good deed and you do it, it's multiplied to 10 to 700 times what Allah multiplies to be, versus that you just said you wanted to do it and didn't do it. So inshallah, may Allah make us successful, make all of us die like the state of Muslimun, and raise us all up that we have Jannah for those when we meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. Alhamdulillah, we want to thank Imam Fareed, Chair of Majlis Ash-Shura for the Philadelphia Delaware Valley. Now, without further ado, we'd like to bring on Dr. Qais Abdullah from the newly formed City of Philadelphia Office of Muslim Engagement. Dr. Qais.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone.
Wa alaikum assalam.
As mentioned, my name is Qais Abdullah. I am with the newly opened Office of Muslim Engagement. So first and foremost, I want to congratulate the Majlis Ash-Shura and its Education Committee on, this is the 2nd education fair being hosted here, correct?
Yes.
So that's a good thing, right? That's a really, really awesome thing. And it means that Allah's mercy continues to be on the Majlis Ash-Shura and everything that the Majlis does. Where else have you had an organization that has been meeting for 3 decades consistently with the single intention of advancing the Muslim community of the city of Philadelphia and the surrounding Delaware Valley. That I think testifies to the mercy and blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the Office of Muslim Engagement, right, and Imam Farid often says this, that when all of those who were trying to become mayors for this cycle, when they were all coming up, they all heard that we need something that represents the office of the Muslims in Philadelphia. And Mayor Cheryl Parker, she was the one who said, hey, how are we going to do it, right? So by the efforts and by the encouragement of a number of different organizations, including individuals, including the Majlis Ash-Shura, you now have the Office of Muslim Engagement, which I now represent. So what does that mean? The goal of this office is to bring the resources of the city of Philadelphia to the Muslim community. This is my one task, my main task, to make sure that the Muslims of Philadelphia have access to the resources of the city of Philadelphia. So recently you heard about the whole budget fiasco and the budget being passed and stuff like that. Anything in that budget that applies to the citizens of Philadelphia means that Muslims have access to it. Period. That is it, right? So my job is to figure out or to hear from you, from the community, what is needed, and then to figure out how to give access to it. Just last week, on Friday, we had this thing called the TCB, Taking Care of Business, where we invited a bunch of cleaning companies because part of the mayor's program, right, is to make Philadelphia safer, cleaner, greener, right? So cleaning up the community and economic access for everyone, right? So cleaning up the community through the resources of the Business Development Corporation within the city of Philadelphia, or Commerce, or the Department of Commerce within the city of Philadelphia, is one of the ways that can happen. So what did I do? I invited Muslim organizations that are part of the cleaning process to be present so that they can hear what's going on and take part in the resources that come. Because masjids clean up the communities already, right? Why are we spending our own money to clean up the community when the city would give us the resources to do that? That's what I'm here for. Right? I'm here to make sure that the things that other people have access to, that you have access to it. And in many cases, all it takes is just reaching out and putting you in contact with the right person, because my role gives me access to all of the folks at all of the departments within the city of Philadelphia. So that being said, let me try to wrap this up because I know Mutaki gave me a time card already. So what do I need from you? Brother Mutaki gave me a time card. So what do I need from you? This is my table right here. I need to see him to make sure he's smiling. Okay, so I'm not in trouble here. All right. So this is my table here, right? I need you to sign up to the mailing list. I send out a newsletter at least twice a month. Well, at least once a month. It's only me. At least once a month I send out a newsletter. So please sign up and join the mailing list. I also have another thing for you to sign up on. That is your support request. Anything you need, right? It could be abandoned cars near the masjid. It could be abandoned cars near your business. It could be that there is a lot that hasn't been cleaned. Or it could be that you are trying to open a business and you're having problems opening the business. I have a support request on the website. You fill that out, it comes directly to me, and that's what I use to address and send it to whoever I need to send it to make sure that things are getting done. As I look to wrap this up, I have an ambitious goal. My goal is to visit, has me nervous. My goal is to visit all of the masjids, all of the masjids and all of the imams who are leading masajid in the city of Philadelphia by the end of August, by the end of September, inshallah, right? That's over 70 masajid in the city of Philadelphia, right? 70. Yeah, so I need to do that because how else am I going to connect with the community? My goal is to also visit all of the Muslim schools in the Philadelphia region before the end of the summer. And then for the non-profit organizations and the businesses, I want to see if I can hit maybe 70% of them by the end of the year or by the end of my first year, which gives me until March next year. So on this table here, you will see a list of, for each district, each councilmatic district, whether it be in the Northeast, in West Philadelphia, wherever it is, just put the name of any Muslim organization, Muslim school, or masjid that you know of, just put it on one of those lists for me. So that way I can put it into my database, and if you can put your contact information so that if it's someone who you can actually put me in contact with, that'll make it a whole lot easier for me as well. So what I need right now is information. What I need right now is support. What I need right now is you telling me what you need so that way we can meet the goals of the Office of the Mayor, the Office of Muslim Engagement, and meet your goals, bi'ithnillah. Any other questions? I'll be here for a couple hours. Looking forward to continue working with you and serving the Muslim community, bi'ithnillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalam. I want to thank Dr. Qais for coming out, the Mayor Office of Muslim Engagement. Don't forget to stop by the table and make his job, as he said, much easier. Without no further ado, we'd like to introduce the chair of the Education Committee, Brother Mutaki Thomas.
Alhamdulillah. Assalamu alaikum. Good morning. Welcome. Ahlan wa sahlan. I'm Eli Mutaki Thomas, the chair of the Education Committee. What can I say? Not much else to say, you know what I mean? Alhamdulillah, we've been working together as a committee since about, really, this, as it is now, December of 2022, right? We really got started in our current iteration, and alhamdulillah, we've been moving well ever since. I want to acknowledge, first of all, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasul. And also all of our, foremothers and forefathers who established what we're standing on right now, right? We want to thank the leaders of the Majlis for doing the work and keeping things going up to this point, those who are with us and those who have passed on. May Allah Ta'ala have mercy upon all of them, forgive them their errors, and grant them Jannah and keep them from the hellfire. Ameen.
Ameen.
So, I don't have a whole lot to say. I just want to do some housekeeping stuff, right? All the other people, they set the tone. We have the tables here, alhamdulillah. We have the book fair in the back. We have Green Fig Publishing. We have Brother Adil Ismail with My Kufi series. We have Hakeem's Bookstore from 52nd Street. You have Sister Zakiya Muhammad to thank for that. I think I heard of Hakeem's for the first time from Sister Zakiya a while ago, okay? 20-something years ago. And I think it's time that we bring Hakeem's back into the spotlight amongst our people.
Yes.
Alhamdulillah. Yes. So, also we have our great sponsors here. Alhamdulillah. Prime Halal Meats. Bayan Academy, which is an online Islamic school. Bayan, they sent some information, and the way it got printed out, it didn't turn out too good. But please look up Bayan Academy. It's an Islamic online option. You could be anywhere in the world and attend Bayan Academy. Also, we have Manakish, right? Corner of 40, right at 45th and Walnut. We have Pasel and Deso. They provided the delicious sandwiches you're going to have for lunch today, inshallah. We have Jamaluddin Tax Services. Jamaluddin Tax Services, which they didn't get their logo to us in time, but their major sponsor, Brother Yusuf Jamaluddin in Frankfurt. Look them up for your tax. He does my taxes. Look them up for your work, inshallah, businesses and personal. We have Cousins Supermarket, providing us with the food, waters, etc. And we have Trader Joe's, right? Trader Joe's. I got a prize. Anybody can tell me which one up here is not Muslim? Okay, everybody gets a prize. You all get free food. We have to, this has been what's on my heart for a little while, normalize Islam here. That's it. To me, that sums it up. Normalize Islam here. That's it. Why are we acting like we're somebody else? We're something different. We over here. No. We everywhere. Let's stop acting like what it is not what it is, okay? But I don't want to talk too long. But that's the bottom line. Normalize Islam. Imam Dr. Qais is saying, that's basically what he's saying, right? So we have rights to all this stuff, so we should act like we do. With that, we have some housekeeping, important tips. We have some time changes, which I wrote down and I left somewhere, so don't worry about it. We have some room changes and time changes. We're behind schedule. Room 1075, we're going to kick it off in room 1075. That says Salat on your itinerary, but it's now the conference room. Because of the setup, it was better for that, right? That's going to be the conference room where most of the talks will take place. The first talk is The Struggle is Real. The Struggle is Real, stories from non-Muslim schools. We're setting the tone with, why are we here? Alhamdulillah, you came here. But that was even hesitant, right? I don't know, right? But alhamdulillah, you got here. Now that you got here, we want to make it present to you why we're here and what we want to be on when we go out of here. We don't want it to be out of sight, out of mind, okay? So we're going to tell you some stories from the people who lived them, why they champion Islamic schools. These are families who've been through some struggles in non-Muslim schools, okay? That's the first session in 1075 at, what time now? It was 11:30. It's going to be at 11:35, all right? 1075 at 11:35, The Struggle is Real. And then from there, you will be directed to the other sessions. There will be another session in that room, simultaneous with the one across the hall. We'll have Mr. Jamil Owens of the Autism Research Center of Children's Hospital, who'll be doing one on autism, as well as schools will be presenting simultaneously with Mr. Owens. So you have two places to choose from at that time. Meanwhile, we want you to browse through the tables. Please eat. Please support the book fair. So, alhamdulillah, we're grateful that you're here. And, donate. Donate. Please donate. You can go to the registration table here. This is in Nabila. We'll take your donation. We have a QR code coming. It's getting printed out. The QR code will be around. But in the meantime, we also have a few paper surveys. Please.
Mention the afternoon workshop.
Okay. So, yes. And you can make a donation at the table. Here with Sister Nabila at the registration table. You put your cash there until we come to the QR code, okay? There will be surveys later on QR code and on paper. And in the afternoon, we will have a very special education presentation. It's going to be the biggest one of the whole day. It's going to start about 2:30. Well, we don't know what time we're going to start now, but it's going to start after the Salat, inshallah, okay? Sometime after the Salat. There's going to be a long, excellent presentation on IEPs and special education. So with that, inshallah, you can disperse. Anything else you say? Okay. So 1075, The Struggle is Real, with the families telling their stories, and then from there you'll be directed where else to go. Shukran, jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wassalatu wassalam ala rasulih. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the second annual Islamic School Fair and Expo in Philadelphia, presented by the Majlis Ash-Shura of Philadelphia and Delaware Valley. My name is Muttaqi Thomas. I am the chairman of the Education Committee of the Majlis. Our purpose for this event, our main purpose as an organization are twofold. We have a twofold purpose as an organization, and with the events that we host, our activities. Our main purposes are to strengthen and spotlight the Islamic schools. We want to strengthen and raise the profile of Islamic schools. Secondly, we are here to support Muslims and non-Muslim schools, which is where most of them are. And that's what we do as the Education Committee of the Majlis of the Delaware Valley. So, we're going to begin our first session for today. Our first speaker is my student, across the street, my former student, brother Jihad Abu Khattab, and he is a parent. He's a parent, right? He is a parent of children. He's a father, right? He's a father And he's going to tell you his story. What we're doing in this session is telling the story of real families, real situations, which emphasize why we need Islamic schools and why we need to be involved in the non-Muslim schools. So with that, he's going to tell you a story, and we'll follow up with questions from you all and some questions from me. Jihad.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
وعليكم السلام.
رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Assalamu alaikum everyone. Thank you, Brother Mutaki, for the introduction. Brother Mutaki was my high school teacher. I went to school across the street, actually. Graduated in 2007, so it's been a long time. And it's interesting that today I speak to you from across the street. I am married. I have two children, inshallah, a 3-year-old and a 7-year-old. And today I want to talk to you about my story. Now, the purpose of today is not to complain, is not to, that's not why that's not the purpose of this. That's not going to get us anywhere. But it's to share, share my experience with you, because maybe you have a similar experience, or maybe, you're just interested in understanding what we're going through as a community here in Philadelphia. So, I'm also in the consulting space, and a lot of times we do assessments, right? The purpose of an assessment is to find out certain areas that can potentially be improved. So inshallah, I want you to think like a consultant and, try to identify these weaknesses or these gaps, so that inshallah, with the help of our leaders, we can move forward and address these issues. And so, as a parent, of a 7-year-old, starting off in the Philadelphia school system, just going to a regular school, it's become apparent to me just through kindergarten, 1st grade, that it's very easy for there to be challenges as a parent, as a Muslim parent. Why is that? Any parents here? Raise your hand. Okay, alhamdulillah. As a parent, you go through so much to cultivate, to bring about the seeds, the fruits of the future that will grow on and become the leaders of the community, inshallah. But the base minimum is you want to raise good Muslims. You want them to have taqwa, to be God conscious, be God fearing. And so from a very early age, they start to copy you when you're praying. They want to ask you questions about, Mom, why, tell me about this cover, and might even try to, I have a 3-year-old who does that. She just walks around the house and she's trying to imitate Mom. But that's the fitrah, that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave these children, right? It's an inclination to be close to the truth, the right path. And it's all rooted in taqwa, being God conscious, being God fearing. And to achieve taqwa, there's 2 things. Is doing what Allah commands you to do, and stay away from what Allah, prohibited. Obviously, there's a lot that goes into that, but that's essentially the goal. And as a parent, my goal is to make sure that my children have that foundation, from a very early age, so that they can become God-fearing, God-conscious. And so, when my child is in school, and then I notice things like, for example, I'm trying to get my, 1st grader, or at the time kindergarten, child, hey, school, I feel some way about music class, right? Oh, sorry, we can't get him out of music class, that's mandatory, okay? Hey, school, thank you so much for everything that you're doing. I have some questions and some concerns about SEL, social emotional learning. And some of the things, it's a toolbox. Some things are going to be great, the child to understand their feelings and things like that. Some other things are like, whoa, this conflicts with my religious beliefs. Well, sorry, that's just how it is, right? So immediately you're faced with a challenge of, you have values as a Muslim. You have the Quran, guiding you, the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ guiding you. But the system that's established, whether it be the curriculum or whatever, is frankly not established by a Muslim. And we live in a secular society where, a lot of times, even the religious folks, they are religious, outside of work, outside of school. It's a secular society. So when you come as a Muslim and I want my daughter to cover, or I want my child not to learn certain things because it severely conflicts with their religious identity, what happens then? You have a challenge, you have a conflict there that needs to be resolved. So when I presented this to the school, and I wanted to also highlight something, and I dubbed this as selective inclusion. It means that you want to be inclusive, but are you being inclusive in a way that takes in everything? People's religious identities and this and this and that. For example, I know of a story of another child who wanted to go pray. Now that becomes an issue where if the school doesn't really understand and doesn't, it's not part of what they do. That becomes an issue. A child wants to fast Ramadan. It becomes an issue. Like I mentioned, a parent doesn't want a child to, learn something else. Say, hey, let's, instead of music, for example, we'll do art. We'll do something else. Those kinds of things. It's not so easy. And so when we present it to the school, unfortunately, you're not really in a position to dictate much. I'll be very frank with you. And the solution for me was very simple. Islamic school. And alhamdulillah, that's what's happening now. My child is, inshallah, attending an Islamic school. But does that mean that we just kind of turn a blind eye and ignore and everyone just kind of goes down that route? Not everyone is going to be able to do that. When you go to Jum'ah, for example, and you see all these parents and all these kids, you know what I mean? Guess what? There's going to be a variety of folks from different backgrounds, and not everyone is in a position to, have their kid in an Islamic school. So by engaging, like we're doing today, and trying to have everyone come together, share our experiences, our perspectives, build bridges with the school district and with other organizations, we can, as Brother Muttaqi said outside, we can normalize what it means to be Muslim. Because when we say normalize, it's not just like people walking around and they look a certain way. Maybe that comes to your mind right away, but it's deeper than that. It's about accepting me and including me as a Muslim with my values, with my beliefs. And that's a summary of what I wanted to share with you today, inshallah.
Okay, so we can take questions from the audience, and I have some questions of my own. So we can take your audience questions first, and then we should start the conversation.
Yeah.
Just letting you know that the next session begins at 12:25, inshallah. Next session's at 12:25. It'll be simultaneous. In this room, we will have schools presenting themselves, and across the hall. No, I'm sorry. This room will be the autism. It'll be talking about autism, and across the hall will be the schools presenting themselves. So, any questions? Yes.
Assalamu alaikum. Could you talk a little bit more about the conflict? Like, how did you and your family deal with that conversation? How did it go, and what advice would you give to parents in dealing with conflict?
So first and foremost, we're talking about our rights as Muslims and as Philadelphians and Americans, right? So when you're dealing with a conflict or a disagreement, whatever you want to call it, it's important to deal with it in a civil way, obviously. But also, what I wanted to do was I wanted to highlight the foundational issues Like for what I told you right now is not, I'm not looking at branches, I'm not looking at symptoms. I'm not looking at, oh, my child is doing this, my child learning that. That's a symptom. But the foundational issue is that, you know, there's a conflict between your identity as a Muslim and between the system that's establishing the curriculum or establishing, you know, just generally the system that is un-Islamic, secular. You can't blame them. That's who they are. So when you're presenting it, you have to understand it. You have to understand the issue. Then you have to present it with empathy, right? And then from there, you organize yourself. So what we did, for example, was, you know, we reached out to CARE actually.
Okay.
We wanted to have a discussion with them about it because again, it's your rights as a Muslim. They're very active, very interested in understanding, you know, or knowing and helping out with issues that Muslims are experiencing in the city of Philadelphia and, you know, elsewhere. Second is you bring together parents. Those parents have the same issues as you. You know, we have a WhatsApp group and we discuss like, hey, what is the best way to approach this issue so that we can go to the school in a solid way and you know, discuss with them our concerns. Okay. And then parents were going like separately, but the problem when you're going separately is different people have different messages, right? And somebody might say something that is problematic. They might present something that it'll label you a certain way. And then it becomes not so much about your beliefs, but it's about theirs. That's not the issue here. The issue is you're a Muslim. You're raising parents. You know, you're raising Muslim kids. Don't let anyone else tell you, oh, it's about this. No, this is my faith. I'm reaching children that, inshallah, their goal is to go to Jannah. There's no compromise on that. If you want to compromise on that, maybe find another place to live. I'll be straight up with you, okay? And even there, you'll have challenges. So inshallah, as parents coming together, you know, engaging with the schools, you do it in a way that is organized. You know, you have the help of different organizations, your masajid. Now, unfortunately, the masajid, I'll be very honest with you, they were not in a position to help. And perhaps it's because there's a gap between the capabilities and the knowledge or whatever and what, you know. But other organizations like Majlis Ash-Shura, like CARE, like Brother Kaiser outside, he talked about Muslim engagement. They'll be in a better position to kind of help and have the back of the Muslims when they're dealing with these kinds of issues and they're coming to schools or other organizations and trying to engage with them on these issues. So what we ended up doing is we had a big meeting, okay, with the school. I think a representative of the school district actually attended. We put down everything into a very well-written letter coming from the Muslim parents who presented it to the school. And in summary, the letter was around, please be inclusive of our Muslim identity. We love the idea of diversity and inclusion, but please be inclusive of our Muslim identity, of our Muslim faith, so that when we come to you and say, hey, this is very problematic for us, you're inclusive of us. It's not selective inclusivity. So we presented that letter. Some of you may know, I call him a legendary brother, Brother Aqil Abdul Sabur, a mentor of mine, who also helped and kind of relay that message, you know, for the parents, with the parents, I should say. But that's what we did. You know, we organized ourselves, we had meetings, we put everything in a fine written letter, we reached out to CARE and other organizations, and we shared that with the school. Unfortunately, it didn't get anywhere. Unfortunately, it wasn't met with concern. It wasn't met with, hey, let's establish something, let's establish a plan. It was, oh, we have these regular, go to the school district, they have these hearings or these sessions, you can go talk there, you can express yourself there. So as a parent, I'm not there to express myself, I'm not there to vent to you. I'm there because I identified a serious issue, and I'm seriously seeking a solution, and so that's what happened. Yes, sir.
I missed the beginning, so I'm not sure, this is a Philadelphia school?
Yeah.
What school was it?
So it's a school in West Philadelphia, Penn Alexander.
Okay.
Oh, big time. That's on Penn's campus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they have a lot of relationships in the community, and we wanted to. There's a lot of Muslims there. Big Muslim community, African community, Bengali community, Arab community, African American community. Everyone being in the heart of West Philly, it's like a hub. And so we wanted to also remind the school that, hey, there's so many Muslims here. Please, it's not just about having someone in a scarf who's like, working in the cafeteria. Like, by having someone, we want someone who's like helping in decision making, someone who could represent the Muslims, and when there's a table and everyone is kind of getting at the table to, discuss critical matters. Yes.
So my question is, I do understand that you need the group, you need the body to make a difference and present yourselves as a unified idea.
Yeah.
So when you went to the school and they were not responsive, but instead sent you to the school district for their hearings, why was the decision made not to go to that next step? Because it seems like that is the process.
Yeah, that's a very good question. At the school meeting, a representative from the school district was there.
Okay.
And heard everything that we presented to the school. And I mean, I'm in business, some of you guys might be in business. If you have those kinds of like conversations and maybe it's a business deal or whatever, there is a effort to connect with you. Like, who are you? I want to know, like, let's get together, let's have a follow-up. There was none of that. So there was no other options besides maybe like litigation. And I don't know if the parents were ready for any of that. I don't know if Muslim organizations are ready for that. So you're now in a position where it's like, okay, I'm gonna go to some discussion, some forum where people are expressing themselves. Someone may be talking about, yeah, my child, he's allergic to this, or like, and you're here, you're looking at this existential issue, like this is my child's deen, this is my child's future. And you're like trying to compete for attention, where to you it's like, this is my Second Amendment. This is my rights as a it's not even as a Muslim, it's as a person. Mm-hmm. Other practicing people probably have the same issue as you. So unfortunately, it never got that far. I would have hoped that more organizations, Masajid, could just have a playbook around it where it's like, it's more of a, hey, let's have some sort of like roadmap. Let's have continuous discussions around a solution, because from certain people there might be a lot of gaslighting happening. You know what I mean? And it's not gonna benefit the Muslims if we're just kind of like tiptoeing around the issue. But I do want to say something just to finish that point is, when we were standing outside and Brother Mutaki was speaking and our Imam here was speaking, I was a little heartbroken. Let me tell you why. How many families are in Philadelphia?
Muslim families?
Yeah.
Thousands.
Why is this entire building not like people outside trying to come in and they can't get in because we met the capacity of the building? So I can say, oh, they're not listening to us, they're not this, that, but what are we doing? Why aren't there so many Muslims here discussing issues that everyone feels? I mean, I talk to people, you talk to people, everyone talks to people, they say, oh yeah, we feel like there's some issues, our students, this and this and that, but where are you? I mean, we gotta wait till something catastrophic happens and then we're reactive. Mm-hmm. We don't wanna be proactive. And so that's another issue that goes along the lines of organizing ourselves and presenting ourselves in a civilized way and in a mature and organized way to different organizations. Yeah.
Brother, I'm sorry, I was out front.
Sure.
Could you kind of summarize what's the main problems that you were trying to address with and I agree with you. No, it's not a good idea to come down here to 440 for their monthly meeting, because it's a nonsense session.
That's what I heard.
Like you said, you would have just been venting for 2 minutes or 3 minutes, whatever they give you, to cut you off.
Yeah.
They're trained not to address your problem, but what they will do is, if you walk out and you seem like you're a little upset, I work for a school district, so
Okay.
you seem like you're upset and you say your little piece, they send somebody to run after you, take you out in the hallway and, probably self-controlling, screw you over. But can you summarize your main
Sure.
issues?
So, to summarize, I'll give you something I shared with at the meeting that we had. When I was in middle school, my father's Imam, Sheikh Abdul Muhsin, maybe some of you guys know him. Obviously, we want to be raised in a way that is Islamic. And one of the things that, we believe, and my father was, he tried to establish this as much as possible, is around music. Music can be very toxic. I don't need to tell you this. So he didn't want to have us listening to any music. And part of it was also if we had a music class, we wanted us to opt out. And when we opted out, what did we end up doing instead? We ended up doing arts. We ended up, maybe doing some physical activities. But it was our right to say this is problematic because we're Muslim. We would like to opt out. Guess what? You're no longer allowed to opt out, really. So when I go to a school and I say, let's say I have a 3-year-old daughter now. Let's say when she's in high school and she has like sex ed, and she's being taught by a male who's different from her, different religion, whatever. They are bringing it from their perspective, and maybe I'm not comfortable with that. So when that's the case, and you go to the school and you say, hey, I'm not cool with that, and it may not even be like an entire subject or class. It may be like certain things that you're like, hey, hold up, this doesn't align with my values and my teachings as a Muslim. You don't have the opportunity to really express yourself in that way, where you're going to be heard and you're going to be, given the same attention. Now, in some cases, I don't think it's across the board. I feel like some schools and some administrators are more empathetic, understanding. They take diversity and inclusion for real. They want to make sure that you don't feel uncomfortable, that, there's a word, my wife always shares it with me, it's called microaggression. You guys study psychology, it's something called microaggression. For example, you got all the resources in the world, but you don't have halal food. Microaggression, all kinds of things. So some administrators, some schools are more open to it. They're understanding. They wanna, yes, we understand that. Let's take the child and make sure that in Ramadan he's he has the support that he needs. He doesn't have to fast. My child is not a baligh. He hasn't attained that level of, but at the same time, maybe he wants to. He wants to try. He wants to, Salah comes. Sometimes we wonder why, teenagers, 18 years old and up, they're not praying. Well, if they're in school and they haven't been praying since kindergarten, because they're in school, they're not praying Dhuhr, they're not praying Asr. Rarely are you waking them up for Fajr. They come back home, they have Maghrib, and then they sleep because they have to wake up in the morning. You don't keep them up for Isha. So, and then all of a sudden they're 18 or they graduated high school, and you think they're just going to be praying everything now. No, it doesn't work like that. My child just turned 7. The Prophet ﷺ says that you start to train your children to pray at the age of 7. That's when you start to get them to understand what is prayer. Wow, Dad, Mom, I want to pray with you, that kind of thing. So anyways, I went on, but I hope that answered your question.
So that's, to summarize, the option of opting out of certain, and we talked about this last year at our, this Expo, where the students are supposed to have the option too, just like you just mentioned about sex ed or homosexual education, these kind of things. So the school that I happen to work at, we do have a lot of exceptions for Muslims. you have special, it's a high school level. So I can imagine with younger students, it's probably is more difficult to get favors, so to speak, to address younger children. But in at the high school level, we do have, like, for example, special prayer times for during Ramadan, and some schools even have prayer rooms, because they figure that they're old enough and they're mature enough to be able to go and meet those expectations.
Yeah.
And just like they make expectations for, say, homosexual children, that they have special bathrooms they can go to, or they can opt out of certain things also. So, like you said, that is right, that some schools are more accepting and understanding. I'm just so surprised that Penn Alexander. So the main thing was that they couldn't opt out of music class? Is that the main issue that you all approached the school about?
Yeah, it's that was one. Another was around, again, the nuances of the topic of social emotional learning. I did a lot of research into that and how that was created by certain organizations and that kind of thing. And so for me, it boiled down to this. Am I sending my child to learn English, math, science, or am I sending my child to be influenced, their thoughts, the way they view life, the way they view, everything around them, by people who don't share the same values as they do? And so you end up in this kind of thing where it's like, okay, so I'm parenting at home, and then somebody else is instilling things in my children and parenting in school, and I'm not there. And some things are great, some things are not so great. They don't align with me and my values, right? And then, your child grows up, goes to high school, then you wonder why you're having so many issues, because your child is no longer like you.
I guess what I'm asking is, can you give one specific instance that really triggers you?
That was it. It was, it wasn't, I didn't wait.
A certain lesson or a certain class
It was,
procedures or food or what?
Real quick,
Yeah.
our time. We have about a little more than 5 minutes. So we're wrapping up, concluding in about a little more than 5 minutes.
so my child was young, like, kindergarten, first grade. So there wasn't anything that was like, it was more so around understanding certain concepts, certain classes. Again, I go back to social emotional learning. That was a big one for me, because I wanted to understand what was that class about. Can I opt out of that class? Because I can't be in the class to say, oh, this is cool, this is not. But again, it's very focused on psychology of the child, how the child thinks, how the child perceives the world around them. I didn't feel comfortable another adult that I've never met in my life telling my child how to feel about themselves. That to me was very alarming. Like, I can do that at home, do that at the masjid. And I was talking to some, fellow Muslims. I said, okay, can we send children to the masjid to learn social emotional learning with other people, like non-Muslims or whatever, be okay with that? No, they might say, no, I'm not going to send my child to go learn social emotional learning at the masjid because it doesn't align with what you think. So what makes you think that when I send my child to the school to take all this knowledge, that I'm not going to have an issue around it? Because at the end of the day, more important than secular knowledge, math, whatever, is the identity of the child and who's forming that identity. So that's what kind of happened there. Sorry.
One quick question I have.
Yes.
So is it that each school has their own discretion about how to accept or modify or include the needs of students who have other interests?
I would not be able to answer that. Sister,
My experience with the school has been the principal tends to have a lot of power in terms of how things work out. If you get like our school, I think it's cooperative, you have a letter saying, I'm going to change the prayer time in school, and they find sometimes the staff also, how many teachers might be there that work with this principal, but it's pretty good.
thank you.
But there is a
Who are you talking about? I'm sorry.
The DEI, I don't remember his name, the gentleman from the school district, I would say there is a centralized person that deals with a lot of this. The young man is there at our meeting.
Okay, yes. Alhamdulillah. So you attended that event. Sister Nabiha is referencing our previous event, which we did in March. It's called Ramadan and Beyond. It's our teach and reach called Ramadan and Beyond, where the education committee, we hosted an event, and the purpose was to educate the educators. And we wanted to really inform them on how to deal with the Muslim students' issues in Ramadan and beyond, right? The premise of that was that every year in Philadelphia schools, when Ramadan comes around, there's a huge increase in the students who say they're Muslim and they need to practice all these things that they weren't doing before. And that puts some pressure on the schools, and there becomes a conflict. And we said, why don't we get ahead of this, right? We want to get ahead of that issue. And so we basically position ourselves, Allah Ta'ala positioned us to educate the educators and become that authority figure, because the non-Muslims have a lot of questions and they don't know to whom do they turn for answers, right? So we partnered with the Office of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion of the school district. That was Mr. Kyle Tribble. Kyle Tribble was the assistant director of the office, and also Dr. Sabria Jubilee, the director of the office. They both partnered with us to do that event, Ramadan Beyond. Inshallah, we'll do it again next year, some weeks before Ramadan, so you can look for that, inshallah. This book is, and Brother Jihad, he referenced sex education in schools. This book is Sex Education in Islam, Upholding Our Values and Principles. This is from a Muslim perspective. The author just walked in right on time. And he will be doing, the author, Brother Yasir Uqda, a member of the Majlis. This book he has written, and he has donated this to the Majlis. It is for sale. We have copies here for sale?
No.
It is for sale online. Amazon. Usually at Majlis events, we do have this available at our town halls, other events. You can pick this up. And the proceeds go to benefit the Majlis. That is sadaqah from Brother Yasir. And he's going to be doing a talk on this today, inshallah, after Salatul Dhuhr. So you can attend that session. And schools can pick this up and teach it in their schools, inshallah. So that's the thing. He talked about the schools and the parents coming together. The parents have the power. All it takes is a few parents, and he said come together, right? When you come together, you're on the same page, and they can't divide you. So that's just some tips from the session today and what we've done with the Education Committee of the Majlis. Our next session, any more questions before we wrap up? Comments? Okay. So our next session is going to be, we have two simultaneous sessions that begin at 12:25, inshallah, about 8 minutes. There will be a session in this room, 1075, on autism. Mr. Jamil Owens, he is the outreach coordinator of the Autism Center at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. He'll be here discussing autism issues. And across the hall, we will have New Medina School of Masjid Allah. They will be presenting their school across the hall at 12:25, inshallah. Inshallah, Brother Jihad, do you want to make a dua? Inshallah, he closes us out. Thank you for your time presentation. Oh, wait, one other important thing. Excuse me, one other important thing. We had another family scheduled to be here, and they weren't able to make it. And I want to read this to you. This is fresh off the press. Thursday morning, I get this text message, 9:12 Thursday morning. And this is the text message. We invited them to speak, but they weren't able to make it today. Assalamu alaikum. Hi. I'm reaching out in desperate need of funding to provide Islamic education, all caps, Islamic education for my daughter, 12-year-old, 7th grade, and 7-year-old, 2nd grade. We have experienced a high capacity of discrimination due to our religious belief and Islamic attire from Montgomery County, the Montgomery County Cheltenham School District. a social worker assigned me, a social worker assigned to our care to provide help for my daughter's mental health has referred that I begin to contact any resources on my own and give some details for the major concern of my daughter's education and safety. The parent gives their name, their contact information, and says, I can be reached anytime via phone or email. Thank you. Inshallah, there is some assistance I can be aided with. This is her desperate plea that she reached out to the Majlis with. We spoke to the sister sometime after that. She said she found our flyer on the floor of a masjid, where she cleans the masjid at night. And she found our flyer there, on the floor there. And she reached out to us. This is the reality that we're talking about here. Okay? People are crying out for help. They don't know to whom to turn. So this is why we're doing what we're doing. So inshallah, remember that, and we have work to do.
I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless our efforts today. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to aid us and allow us to better serve Him and to establish communities that are based on righteousness, based on taqwa, being God conscious. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to aid our leaders in serving our community, to bless their efforts as well. And a very important dua is ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to use us and not replace us. Because when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala replaces you, then you're in trouble. So with that being said, inshallah, we'll be around. If you guys want to chat afterwards, I'll be here, inshallah. And jazakallah khair.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Imran, and I had the honor of introducing Brother Jamil Owens. And Jamil Owens is the Family Resources Coordinator at CHOPS. So he's going to make a presentation. His presentation goes until 1 o'clock. So if you have any questions during the presentation, you can ask those, and then after the presentation, we'll take more questions. All right? So we'll go ahead and get started.
So thank you guys for being here. I knew I didn't have a screen, so I brought my little screen.
So one other thing, his hard copy information is in the lobby. I'll show you where the table is afterwards.
Yeah.
All right.
You can come by, talk to me. You came by. We spoke already. So I know on the program, we wanted to talk about the importance of supports for our community. But I want you guys to get to know me. So the one thing I learned about this business and just life in general is that people won't remember particularly what you do. Is more of an association with your name. So how they actually see you in the community, your name, that's what you'll be lived for. That's where they'll associate everything that you do and the heart that you have. So I want to tell you a little bit about my story being an autism father. So we're going to break into that. So I'm going to try to break through. I got a little bit of time straight. First off, thank you, because you guys didn't have to be here on a Sunday. You could have been at another session, one of these amazing sessions here. You could have been outside, but you're here. So I appreciate you guys actually being here. It means a lot to me personally as an autism parent. A lot of these pictures are pictures of me and my son Shane, who I'll tell you a little bit is 16. He's in high school right now. Amazing young man. So in order for you to get to know me, you have to see some of the pictures of me in my transitional stage and my journey as an autism father. So our agenda, I'm going to tell you who I am, my advocacy journey, some interesting facts, what I realized, the hard conversations, Shane and the hunt for the man within, and then thank you. So we're going to try to get through that. So who am I? So I was a corrections officer in the state of Delaware from 2016 to 2017. Wasn't that long. I'm also a father. I have 2 children now, Shane 16. Then I have a toddler who is 2.5. I'm a husband, I'm a public speaker, I'm an author. I have 7 books on Amazon. My first book I have with me today that really just embraced the journey in which I've been through. I am a photographer. I did photography for a little bit. I'm a volunteer firefighter, EMT. I have a podcast that's called The Awesome Show. I'm also on social media as well. and I'm a nonprofit founder of Awesomeness Incorporated, which is besides what I do professionally here at CHOP, it's just something I do as an autism parent. That's everything. So let's talk about my advocacy journey. That amazing picture you see down at the bottom, that was the 80s, y'all. If you ain't an 80s baby, you definitely avoided some bad culture and some bad clothing. But unfortunately, I'm an 80s baby, so I caught that one. That's a picture of me and my mom. And my advocacy journey actually started with her. So you guys can't tell, but on my right leg, which is the picture up here with Shane, I have what is called an AV fistula. When I was born, literally, the main vein that runs through my body that circulates the blood from my brain to my toes was missing in my right leg. So I was basically dying on the table as soon as I was born. What the doctor did is they took the smallest vein in my leg, and they poured it, which means they actually have this modular device in my leg, and they expanded that little vein into a main vein. That's the only reason why I'm here. That's the reason why I've done this advocacy journey, because I realized that my mom had a split second to say whether she wants to deal with this and deal with a lot of scrutiny that comes with this and a lot of medical complexes, or if she just wanted to let me die. She chose life, which I'm very, very grateful for. She educated me about my disability, what I should be doing, how I should be taking care of it. But when it came down to my confidence and my mental health, my dad wasn't around. So that's where I missed out at. The importance of a father to say you are more than what you actually appear out in society. Same thing happens with our autistic kids, right? They are more than what their characteristics are, more than a sensory overload if you get an opportunity to learn them. So I had to learn this throughout my life, exactly who I was. But with that, it came a lot of trials and tribulations. I was raised in a single parent home. Everybody here, single parent home? Two parents, anybody? Single parent home? Single parent? Single parent? Okay. So, your grandma?
Great grandma.
Great grandma. Yo, same thing. Great grandma, North Philly. I grew up 17th in Susquehanna. After a situation I'll explain briefly, but single parent home. It was difficult for my mom as a woman to navigate raising a man. And that society back then, I couldn't imagine it today. And then I had my little brother, so now she had two men that she was trying to raise on her own. She had me at 17 though. I never knew that until I looked at, and you guys will learn, at her death certificate. 17. She was a baby, having a baby, you know? So she was trying to navigate life. Father left. I felt the love of my mother, but also the emptiness of my father being absent. So once again, how can I advocate for myself as a man? Not saying that a woman can't do it, but it's more of a male connection that I needed in order to do it in a way that was strong, but also empathetic at the same time. My mom couldn't teach me that. She could only teach me the empathetic and the nurturing side of it. I still needed that strong feeling from a man, and I didn't have it. She worked 3 jobs to support me and my little brother. She was never around. So I had award ceremonies, I had concerts, things that I was doing in school. She was never there because she was always working just to keep the lights on. And sometimes the lights wasn't even on. Just couldn't afford it, right? These are some interesting facts about absent father syndrome. Basically, I'm gonna sum it up because it's very small, keep on going, is scientifically what has been proven is that when you have a child without a male role model in the household, that child is more likely to suffer in society because they don't have a balance of structure within the household. Now, I say that with complete compassion to the ladies that are here, because women, you can provide a very substantial structure in a child's life. But when it comes to the time where that man needs to stand up in the force of believing in something, whether that be religion, whether that be race, culture, whatever it may be, studies have shown that they are more likely not to do that because they just don't know how. So it's not a stab at women, it's more so saying, hey, you guys, you have your lane, which we can't do, and then we have our lane, which you guys can't do. Working together, we enrich our children together. And that's what I was actually absent of in my upbringing. But you'll see how I came into this position and how it worked for me. That's a cute baby right there. That's me. But trauma started for me in the early age, father absence. My mom was trying to find love, violence in the community. 80s baby, North Philly. My particular block, it was the Jamaicans running my block. So I would wake up, going to school, and it'd be a whole bloodbath right outside my steps. And you grew up in North Philly, a lot of the area had the marble steps. That's where I grew up, where my great grandma was outside scrubbing the marble steps every day. That's what I seen in my community. Bullying because of my leg, utilities being cut off, that is a trauma. These are things that we face in our community every single day. That is a trauma, and we have to recognize those. It's okay to say, yeah, I've been poor. I had to warm up warm bath water over a little electric stove if the gas was cut off. I've been through all of that, and I can talk about it, and it helps me in my advocacy journey and helping other families, because the first thing they want to say in their mind is like, you don't know what it's like to be in my shoes. Your shoes? No. But the realization of the community and the times that I grew up, yes, we have a bond, and this is how. This is why I tell my story. Medical diagnosis, AV fistula. So a question I want you don't have to answer this, but what traumas are you used to? So the first thing about recognizing the traumas that you're used to, you begin to heal yourself, and then you begin to heal your families, and then your community, and so forth and so on, but it starts with you. So without us actually recognizing our traumas ourselves, me included, I wasn't able to do this job. So 6 years ago, 7 years ago, I wasn't the right fit for this job because I was worried about me. I didn't finish healing in my traumas and what I actually had to see. Something I want you guys to think about and start working on those. It's okay. 5 stressful events, major illness, domestic violence, witnessing a death, and there is something else on there that I can't see. So we're gonna skip that, it's no problem. Those things that I mentioned, I've experienced all of those. So this was well before my son Shane actually came in my life, and I experienced every single one of those things. So how can I care and love for somebody that was ultimately going to be different than what society says, right? So, and I'll share that, it came to a level where I had to open up my heart to my specific religion, and you guys have a specific religion. And once you do, now the accountability of man doesn't even matter, because you have a different accountability, and that's in your personal scripture, right? That's what matters. That's what overtakes anything else that anybody else here on this planet can actually say to you, because you know who you are. You identify with that. We want to skip over this one. One thing I want you guys to really home in on, and I had to think about this because I was doing this, and you might be on social media right now, you might see a lot of people actually doing this, is what is called imposter syndrome. This is a medical term, and I want to read this off. And this is a psychological phenomenon in which you feel like you don't deserve your accomplishments. You might feel like you don't belong, don't deserve your success, or are out of place. I had imposter syndrome in school. Because of my leg, I said I couldn't be better than other boys my age physically, but I can outsmart them. So what I lacked in as far as physical appearance, or what I thought so, I made it for my smarts. So all straight A's and B's. I went to Central High School, got accepted. I had 3 of the best schools wanting me. That's how I excelled, but that was an imposter syndrome. So I noticed on social media 3 weeks ago, an autism mom dressed her son up from head to toe. Gucci, Fendi, and everything like that. Amazing. Kid looked good. But is that who the child is? So are you inflicting your own subconscious worries on that child? Or are you really showing the world who your child actually is with autism? That's a form of imposter syndrome. I'm sure you guys can name a couple of people that you're following right now that may have done that already with their child. That's bad. Because now you're setting that child up to, one, think that they only need to dress this way to impress people, but also, two, not allowing society to see that person for who they are, or that child for who they are. I wanted to bring a point to that because I did that with Shane. I did that a lot of times, where I made sure he was fly from head to toe, haircut and everything, as we should as parents. But when it came down to knowing who Shane was, nobody knew who Shane was. They just knew he's a black boy with autism that dresses good. This is happening in our communities today, every single day, right now as we speak, because parents aren't getting the help that they need to actually go through this trauma and come out on the other side, which is supports and services for their child. Instead of spending that $500-600 on a clothes, spend that on a support or a service that's needed. Get those resources for that child to actually be better. So, skip to this, the hard conversation. My mom kicked me out at the age of 16. She suffered from schizophrenia and depression. She thought I was her enemy. So at 16, I was sleeping on porches. I was sleeping on other people's couches. I was fending for myself. Nobody at school knew I was going through because, once again, I didn't have a man in my life that says it's okay to be not okay. What I was taught by society is that, oh, you just got to toughen up and you just got to do what you got to do. So what happened because of that is I got kicked out of Central, basically dropped out, got my GED, and just started working. I didn't even care about school, just started grinding and working 2, 3, 4 jobs at a time. My mom was homeless, living on the streets. I did not know where she was for about a total altogether for about between 4 to 6 years. I never knew where she was. Holidays, anything like that, didn't know where she was. She had custody of my brother, lost custody because she got into a physical altercation with law enforcement. They locked her up, they let her out. She didn't get better. She got locked up. The last time I heard from her, I was working a job from home, got a call from Anchor Mental Hospital, and they said, your mom's here. She got on the phone, she said, I have stage 4 cancer, I have 3 months to live. I didn't see her in all those years and only had 3 months left with her. So I dropped everything, started to work with her as far as like rebuilding a connection, learning her from the start. So those 16 years prior to that didn't even matter. Those 3 months mattered because that's all I had left with her. And we built a beautiful bond before she actually left this planet here. In the same time, my dad came into my life finally, and we reconnected, and he's in my life currently today. And what I gather from this is that it was a bigger blessing to be able to experience life on my butt, per se, or my ass, per se, versus being taught through the lens of my mom, because I believe my mom would have nurtured me so much to the point that I wouldn't be able to be where I'm at today. I had to learn the hard lessons. And I implore a lot of you ladies here is that please continue to nurture, but also teach those hard lessons. Let them fall down, because that's going to make them stronger, and that's going to give them power and the resilience that is needed. But also too, for the male counterparts that are here, let's just say you and the mother are not together. You still have to be in the life of that child. You have to teach those hard lessons. It's very, very important.
Yeah. We have 5 more minutes and then we'll take questions.
So what does this mean for autism? I'm gonna skip to that. Thank you for letting me know that, because I didn't know. I didn't want Shane in my life when I found out he had an autism diagnosis. For one, I thought this was a personal thing with me. I thought it was my fault. I often ask God, hey, why did you do this to me? I don't deserve this. There's other families out here with kids that are healthy. Why do I have a kid that's not considered healthy? That was my mindset, which ultimately referred me to distance myself from my family, and then ultimately we got a divorce. This is what's constantly happened in our communities today, because men are challenged with understanding the emotional aspect of when it comes down to a diagnosis. We can get it in black and white, but it looks different when you're talking about emotions associated with it. So we are struggling in our communities because every appointment, every conference, every seminar, we're seeing more women there and we're not seeing the men there. So what's the difference between a mother and a father when it comes down to supporting their child with autism? There is no difference. The problem is the communication between mothers and fathers. The communication of a service provider like me standing up here and saying, it's nobody's fault. How can I get both of you guys to work together to instill that this child will be successful in the years to come? It's called educating. So a lot of times when I come out here, I start off with pieces of my life because I don't want you guys to think, oh, it's just another guy up here with a PhD talking to me about my child in my particular situation. No, it's a guy with a GED telling you that I've been through the fire and I'm here and I have a son that's healthy who happens to have autism. But I wouldn't know that if I didn't change my narrative and my perspective on who my son was. He's Shane first, he's an African-American male second, and then he happens to have autism. Those are the three things. That's my one. The point is, us as organizations such as CHOP, where we have all this money, all these resources, we have all these buildings in the middle of West Philly, Southwest Philadelphia, we're not doing enough to help you guys out in the community, your specific community, about resources, about what do I need to know about education, or just connecting with you to say, hey, we don't want nothing from you, but it's more so what can we do for you? How can we support you in understanding what autism is? So this is not, I do these presentations all the time. Like, it is what it is, it's my life. It's easy for me to talk about it. Am I knowledgeable about all the statistics? Not a lot, but I know a lot because I lived it. But generalized statistics about autism, I can give you all the information off the website. You can pull it up from your phone. The emotional connection today, you wouldn't have known that about me unless I shared that with you. And I think that's the reason why you'll remember my name. You might not even call on me, but you might see me out in the community or somebody else out there be like, hey, I got somebody that you could talk to. His name is Jamil. Oh, I think I heard of him before. I think I was in the session and I heard his story. It's crazy, it's wild. But I'm here to support you guys in whatever fashion that may need. Is there any questions and related to autism that I can personally answer right now for anybody here? Anything you ever wondered about? Yes, sir.
Just, I may have missed, excuse me. How did you define autism, if you did?
So I didn't define autism, but autism is a neurological condition. So autism stems from the neurological circuits that form throughout your entire body. This is nothing that you can do, whether it be drinking, eating. They say they still haven't found the reason behind it, but areas that you live in, smog, smoke, things like that, I think personally are factors to it, but science still is trying to find the definite answer. But keep this in mind, it's a neurological condition. It's not a disease or anything that you can catch. It's something that literally these children are born with, which, in matter of fact, once again, women, when you birth these beautiful babies, it's not your fault. You're just doing the simple thing as being a mother and caring for your child. So don't go into thinking, because if you want to get down to it, I could blame my mom for my leg. She birthed me, right? I came from her body, so why my leg is not right? It's a simple thing. Yes.
Do you work with schools? Because a lot of Islamic schools don't have the capability and expertise to like identify certain things, and a lot of times the parents, they are used to their child just being a certain way, but when they get into the classroom setting, now they are like the teacher is seeing them next to other students with different abilities, and they may notice some things. They may bring it to the parents' attention, or they may not notice it. They may just be like, oh, this kid is a little like this. Is that something that CHOP offers, where they can work with some of these smaller schools to teach them what to look for when they have students, so that they can say, okay, this kid, needs this type of help? Because a lot of times what I've seen is those kids, they kind of filter out of those settings and get into public school or charters where they have special ed capabilities, and the schools lose those types of students, and then they become like a school that really is only for a certain type of child, which is you have children of all types.
Yeah.
So do you offer that? Do you come into schools and like train teachers to see to know what to look for?
Yeah, so we was talking about this earlier. Daycares, I come into your church, your place of worship. I don't care where it's at. I respect your rules of your organizations. Just let me know what they are. But I'm bringing clinicians. I'm bringing my own personal stories. That's the reason why I'm here today, is to start the initiation, the process, so you guys may contact me and be like, hey, we want you at our place. We want you at our school. Can you talk to us? And we'll be able to do it, and it costs nothing. It's a community partnership, so we're able to do that. I come out to block parties too. You might see me with a table at a block party. It don't matter where it's at. I'm there, because this is important not only for my son, but for everybody's child.
Do you do work out of state?
Yeah, I was just telling you, I did a presentation in Dallas. I've been to Dallas, Washington, D.C., Ohio I'm about to go out to, so yeah, anywhere. I got 4 wheels, or there's a plane that go there, I'm there. Like, just let me know, and I'm there, and I'm talking about what we do, but at the end of the day, Chop got plenty of money. I don't need to be like, chop this and chop that. Y'all know what Chop is. But what we do behind the scenes is the most important. The people that we hire, like myself, that have lived experience is the most important part of what we do, because we can come out here and talk on a different level other than just numbers and statistics. We can talk from personal experiences. So yes, answer your question, I'm there. Wherever's at, I'm there.
You had a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I guess a comment, piggybacking off what you were saying, because I do home daycare. And since I have a smaller setting, alhamdulillah, the good thing is that I was able to, which all daycare should be doing, and some are better than others, screening children and observing them to catch those characteristics before they get to kindergarten, first grade, because then they have to do a whole nother evaluation where it should have been caught prior to if they were in a quality child care program. So the training is very important. I do plan on, like, doing some trainings and things, and maybe getting the resources out there to other child care centers that may or may not have it, just because that training is important. If they get the early intervention, they can get the resources and things that they need beforehand, and then, because I feel like there are a lot of kids who are coming into the school system in kindergarten where things were missed that could have been caught between that 3 to 5 age range. Because even like my son, I'm an autism mom as well. My son is 8. I picked up on it when my son, when he was around fairly early. He was 3, but he got early intervention services from 3 to 5. So once he got to school, he was he had some therapies and stuff that helped him integrate into a bigger classroom. And he had those support services that he needed going into grade school.
Mashallah. I just want to interject. I have an autistic son. He's 19. There's so much information and maybe some misinformation out there. They say that if the father is older, and I had him when, my wife had him when I was 47. So that's another thing that people look at. The older you are, for the male, the higher the chances are that the child might be autistic.
There are higher chances for birth defects and anomalies with older women, but that's only because of what science knows today. So you hear it on the news, you got women who are like 50 or 60 years old having babies, and there's nothing wrong with them. It has nothing to do with socioeconomic status. It's just, just the body, how the body reforms with the childbirth. Every woman's body is different. One childbirth may be different than the second childbirth. So it's a lot of contemplating factors. Just like you said, don't believe everything. And the thing I want to empower everybody about is that you are the expert. So when you come into offices like ours at CHOP, and our doctors even try to tell you something different, like, Doc, I know something going on with my child, you better tell that doctor, no, I'm the expert here. You are not the expert because I live with my child. You only see them maybe 2 hours out of a month. And we push that. You guys are the expert, but we gotta hear from you. So if you really have some worries about your child, it's okay to talk about it. You got a cousin, little Ray, little Mookie, whoever it is, somebody that live on the block, I know something going on with that kid. That's the hardest part about this job and even being in this field, is telling somebody that your child is not quote unquote normal. But what is normal today? That's one thing I want you to think about. What is normal today? We're basing the word normal on somebody that's imperfect themselves. Whoever wrote the dictionary, they're not perfect. But we base our realities of what normal is around that. So implore somebody, hey, listen, your child is presenting certain characteristics that might fall in line with autism. Do you need some help with trying to figure that out or talking to somebody? Send them to me. It's easy. But at least you did your due diligence in trying to tell them like, hey, I've seen this somewhere before and it looks like this. You may want to ask your doctor about it. That's the hardest part about this, is really stepping to the parents and the caregivers and giving them that information. But once you get through that, it's pretty much easy. Anything else? Anybody else? Any questions? I know we out of time. I have a table out there. You can stop past. I got tons of resources and information over there. But yes, if you have an organization, a business, anywhere, like I said, I'm there. Just let me know what you need, and I'll come out there. I'll talk to myself, or I'll bring one of our doctors, and we'll talk a little bit about what autism looks like. And remember, autism doesn't leave just because the child grows up. The child becomes an autistic adult. So what we do now prepares them for the future. And even if there's a possibility of missing a window, and let's say the child's a young adult and adult, you can start right now with helping them out so they can be successful in whatever life they live from that point on. But it starts with you. So I appreciate you guys. Thank you for having me for this little bit.
So I'll be out and I'll show you where the table is, where he has a hard copy information. Assalamu alaikum.
So, alhamdulillah for coming in on this. In reference to sex education, my name is Yasir Ukhtar. And so what I did is I wrote this book. This is probably like my 9th book, and I wrote this on behalf of the Majlis Ash-Shura, so all the internet proceeds go towards the Majlis Ash-Shura General Fund. And so you're always going to hear a little bit with me, my undertone is like something with conflict. So as I wrote a book on conflict resolution as well, so it's always like an undertone of that. So just kind of keep that in mind when I'm talking. What's interesting, I wanted to share a few things with you that I think that's interesting. One, and put this in the last Majlis newsletter, that the Supreme Court has decided to take up a case that originated in the state of Texas, whereas I think it was Governor Abbott signed off on a law saying that for people to access sexually explicit websites, porn websites specifically, they needed to upload a picture of themselves to prove they're over 18. And so, of course, the porn industry fought against that. They're fighting against that. Like, that's going against free speech and stuff like, or you're inhibiting free speech. I'm trying to access free speech. That's still a problem. And so, of course, you have some prominent civil rights organizations backing that as well, because they're like, you can't inhibit free speech. And so the Supreme Court has decided to take that up. And so I guess we'll probably get some kind of ruling maybe in October, November, I don't know, something like that. Maybe later this year or maybe early next year. I can't remember with the actual Texas versus what, I can't remember. But you can always see that. So that's something I think that's pretty interesting to kind of follow. Now, of course, for Muslims, it really doesn't matter what the laws say and stuff. We shouldn't be on the websites anyway and stuff like that. Well, I'm over 18 and all that doesn't really matter. But it is something that's interesting because, of course, our kids have access to these things. So it's just something interesting. And I'll give you an example. One time I'm sitting with 2 of my daughters. They're 17 and 13 now, but this was some years ago. We were talking about snakes. And what's one of the common snakes, anybody, that we see in our backyard or whatever? Garter snakes. So I try to type that in real quick. But I'm talking to them, I'm just typing in real quick. Y'all know what I hit. I made a mistake it did, right? Women, what'd I do? Something came up with what? Garter belts.
Garter belts.
So I'm just talking to them and hit it, and then the sexually explicit, I'm like, whoa! So I kind of froze and looked at them, and they froze and looked at me, and I'm like, oh my God, I just did something real quick. And so we all are touched by these things, even if you're not intentionally trying to go at it. We're all touched by it. So some of the things we get into in the book, again, you can get the book on Amazon, Sex Education this time. I think it's $12.95 on Amazon. We get into a lot of things. One is, of course, ghadul basar, lowering the gaze. Of course, this is a significant thing. We get into masa'ib, or tribulations, and that's the kind of angle we went in reference to even people experiencing some stuff with homosexuality. This may be their musibah. This may be their tribulation. And it's interesting too, because I remember hearing the story, I can't remember the sheikh's name, but he said he was talking to a sister, and she said, Allah hates me. He said, why are you saying that? Why would you say Allah hates you? She said, because my children are excellent, obedient, they're Muslim, they do they're excellent. So the sheikh is like, okay, yeah. And my husband, he is unbelievable. We have an excellent marriage, been married for X amount of years, no problems. So sheikh is like, yeah, I'm still trying to figure out why you're saying the Lord hates you. She said, money. I make a lot of money. There's no issues with money at all. It's been like that for years. Again, sis, I'm not really, he didn't say sis. Sister, I'm trying to figure out what is the issue. And she said, and health. Like even at my age, I think she was like 60 something. So I don't have any ailments. Everything is good. Alhamdulillah. And he said, sister, I'm not understanding why you think Allah hates you with all that you mentioned. And she said, because he said he would test us in those areas. It don't seem like I'm getting a test. So he must hate me. He said, oh, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying now. Remember, sometimes Allah tests us in good, in the khair. Sometimes we forget that stuff. Sometimes you're getting tested in quote unquote bad, and sometimes you're getting tested in quote unquote good. That was just an interesting story. And so, musibas or masa'ib, we get into that a little bit. Another big one we get into in the book is khawatir. And I mentioned this maybe in another book too, if I'm not mistaken. And I probably mentioned another book I'll do about trauma and stuff like maybe in a year or two. And the khawatir is passing thoughts. This is very important. I explain this to non-Muslim kids as well in West Philly. I try to explain, I just don't use the Arabic terms, of course. Khawatir are passing thoughts. Everybody get them. Right? They come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, come from the Amlak, or the angels, and come from, of course, shayateen. And after the khawatir, it can be good or bad. After the khawatir, we call it the afkar. Now, scholars have called it afkar. These are reflective type thoughts. Then the next one is niyyah. Intentional type thoughts. So now you're forming more, you're going towards action, right? And then of course after that is himma. It's pretty similar, but a little different because himma, some people translate it as determination. So it's maybe more of a plan involved now. I'm more resolved to do whatever I was thinking about. And then after that is amal, which is action. Then after that, say ayada or ayadats, which are habits. So again, this could be good or bad. So in the context of this, a lot of young people, because it was written more so for young people, but hopefully it's beneficial for people even my age. And I've benefited from even writing and researching and stuff. But we all struggle with khawatir, the negative khawatir. We all have those things. So many scholars have said that it's really difficult to suppress those negative thoughts. You can do it, but it's a little more difficult. The lower hanging fruit is to redirect those thoughts. And I'm saying this in the context of sex education because, of course, you get thoughts about sex. And a haram type of sex, talking with your wife or a woman with your husband or something like that, especially for the younger people. And so we try to get into that, trying to break that down. Nothing too crazy, too heavy. I'm not that deep, so I can't go but so far anyway. So we get into that as well. We were talking earlier, we get a little bit into khitbah, which is engagement. We start off with what is education, and so forth, trying to break it down from that standpoint. But hopefully, the idea with writing it too is the Islamic schools, clubs, parents will actually go through this with the young people. That's part of the idea. And so we have like questions, we don't have answers, and that's intentional. In the back, after each chapter, most chapters. And actually another thing, and we put in here, 2012 was a real pivotal moment in in American history. In that was the first year that most Americans, 51%, had a smartphone. 2012, that was the first time that happened. And of course, smartphones, a simple definition you could say is a small computer, a portable computer, if you want to say. I mean, essentially that's what it is. And so we know Google is probably what the largest search engine. You got Bing, you got DuckDuckGo, you got a bunch of them. But Google is the largest one. They have the market share. And the largest market share, if I'm not mistaken, at least in America. And the stuff, the percentages of people looking up sexually explicit information or images is huge. And so now with the smartphones in 2012, starting in 2012, we have most Americans, that's what we have. That has opened the door even more for us to access sexually explicit material. So I'm gonna give an example, like some of the questions, it's like, you can say corny questions or whatever. What chapter is this? We get into Haya. This is a chapter on Fityan. Fityan is like a word for youth. So for instance, we say, of the following, and as explained in this book, Haya signifies A, B, C, D. A, fear of Allah. B, patience in the face of danger. C, covering our nakedness. And D, modesty. Which one is it? D. Another one. As long as a Muslim covers properly, they are considered a modest person. True or false? False. Because another thing we get into is, of course, is awra. What is the awra? It can get a little, I guess, complicated when you talk about the different levels of awra, if you're around your father, if you're around your husband, if you're around just in public. But the awra, and is we don't want to harp on women and stuff by any stretch, because sometimes even with young men, it's a problem. You know, it's like the tight pants around their private area, and then of course it's, it's a style. It's been like this for some years, like to show your underwear, you have your jeans on, and you see it at the masjid all the time. You see it like, come on, we can't. I ain't staring at your back, so I'm just saying, but it's just pretty obvious. Pull your pants up, and I don't want to sound like some old curmudgeon. I get up my lawn, but pull your pants up. Come on, man, we can't be doing that. And so same thing with sisters. And I'm thinking more so of myself dealing with my own daughters, not trying to watch other people's daughters or wives, of course, by any stretch. But we do have an issue sometimes with the tightness. And so that's another big issue we got to make sure we're on top of as individuals. And then, of course, I know, like, I remember Dr. Yasser Qadi said this, which is a really good point. Men have to be very careful trying to comment on women's dress and stuff. Leave that to the teachers, because they're going to speak more in general. And then, of course, the walis, or the awliya, the fathers, uncles, grandparents, whoever, the husbands. Leave it to them to comment on their wife or their daughter, or their, don't try to do, because that's another little issue. Got men always commenting on sisters, like, Astaghfirullah, why you wearing that today? Like, you don't even know this sister. You don't have a relationship with her. It's like, we got to avoid that kind of stuff. But we do get into that awra. Awra, haya, social media, like I said, homosexuality we get into a little bit. From the standpoint of it may be your musibah, because everybody's going to have a musibah. Yours may be drugs. Yours may be money. Yours may be health. Yours may be sexuality stuff. And we even get into some things, how young people kind of handle this stuff if they have a friend, or they believe it was a friend, associate, I'll say, that is like this now. It's getting more and more prevalent. More and more prevalent. People coming out with it. I'm not saying it's a new thing. It's not a new thing. But it's more open now. So how do you handle that? So you can associate with the person, like maybe a classmate. But like now you start trying to go to parties and over your home, you over their home. Even at my job, it's a guy there that's he's no longer there actually, but it's a gay guy, and I get along with him because we don't get into his personal stuff. We don't get into my personal stuff. So, but then they said they have a company party, and it's usually at his house. So first, I'm not going to parties that have alcohol and all that stuff. And two, like, there's no way I'm going to that. Like, I'm not doing that where he could be with his husband. Well, I'm not doing that. So we have to, as Muslims, we have to draw the line. Something, come on. We can't just like, hey, to each his own. Like, no, what they do privately is what they do privately. What I do privately is what I do privately. It's none of y'all business what me and my wife do. Or who is my wife. It's none of y'all business. So I'm not trying to figure that out. We shouldn't have to try to figure that stuff out. But I'm not going to your house when y'all celebrate. I'm not doing all that stuff, though. So it is what it is. So any comments or questions? I don't want to keep running my mouth.
Musiba, what's that mean?
Tribulation and trial, difficult situation. And one of the du'as we say, we're taught to say when we're going through any type of musiba, maybe it's money, again, stuff with sexuality, maybe you haven't been married yet, you've been really, really trying. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Surely from Allah we come, to Him is our return. Allahumma jurni, O Allah, reward me, fi musibati, in my tribulation, wa khuluf li, and replace it, khayran minha, with something better than it. So that's one of the du'as we say when we're going through a musibah. Another thing, I can't remember if I put it in the book, another thing is a hadith that always stood out to me when I first read it and heard it, is when the Prophet ﷺ said, and I've got to be careful with that, of course, quoting him wrong, of course. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. Kullu ummati mu'afan. All of my ummah will be forgiven their sins. Illa al-mujahirin. Except the mujahirin. And this is another big thing we're running into in the Muslim community. So again, kullu ummati mu'afan illa al-mujahirin. All of my ummah will be forgiven their sins except the mujahirin. The mujahirin are one of two types. One, it's a person or people who either commit sins openly or people who commit sins, like kind of like all of us in a sense, or have done at least, but now they disclose it. So that's a really important thing we have in Islam. Like, we're going to all have problems. You don't publicize it. You keep working on it. And we can't be comfortable with doing sins publicly. And we have to have enough courage with wisdom, of course, to give nasiha to our brothers and sisters when they're going a little off. You gotta use some wisdom. What words to use, I don't know. Like, it depends on your relationship and all that stuff. I don't know. You have to figure that one out. But that sticks out. Kullu ummati mu'afan illa al-mujahirin. So may Allah protect us from being amongst the mujahirin. So another thing we get into is tawbah. That's something young people, of course, people my age too, older people, but we have to teach young people how to make tawbah. What is true tawbah? Tawbah is regret. In essence, it is regret. So I'll say it real quick. 4 components to tawbah. 2 of them not always applicable. 1, you stop doing the act. So you can't be in the middle of doing something haram and saying, may Allah forgive me, and it's like you're in the middle, you got to stop actually doing it. But maybe you've done some in the past, so that's what I'm saying, it's not always applicable. Number 2, you got to actually ask Allah for forgiveness. Astaghfirullah. And we know the Prophet Muhammad asked for forgiveness at least 100 times a day. So where that leaves us, you can imagine. The 3rd is you intend to never do it again. Now remember, you gotta be careful. Scholars say, don't promise, because that has fiqh ramifications, like aman and nadhr or nudhur, vows, promises and vows. Don't necessarily do that. And of course, there's more reward when you fulfill a vow. But I'm personally not suggesting that. I'm saying that just fully intend not to do it again. And then the last one, again, it's not always applicable, is you got to make the wrong right. So I steal Motaki's phone. But it happened in the past. So the first one, we're done with that. Second one, oh Allah, forgive me for stealing the phone. Oh Allah. The third one, I'm never going to steal a phone again. You got to give him back his phone. You can't just keep it. Now again, you got to use some hikmah, because maybe if I give him his phone back, he'll kill me, because that's how he is. I don't know. I don't know every situation. So again, you got to use some hikmah, especially if you're talking about money. You may have stole thousands of dollars from somebody. How you give it back? Allah, maybe talk to a sheikh or something like that. I don't know. But you can't keep it. Oh Allah, forgive me. You gotta give it. Something gotta give. So those are the typical 4 components of Tawbah, and that's what we get into as well in the book as well. So again, hopefully the book will spur conversation. It's not trying to be like a end-all, be-all, catch-all, everything. The questions will spur some conversation with your children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews, stepchildren, foster children, whatever, all that. And in a school you work at, I think we said 10 and up, but it can go lower than that depending on the teacher, whoever's instructor is. You may want to word it differently, I don't know. But it's nothing like real crazy here from a sexually explicit standpoint. We do get into puberty a little bit, like what is puberty? And so how to do ghusl. Small things like we do say, I'll say this right now, like teachers have if you have a female teacher, right, in typical public school, maybe in some Islamic schools, they may call on a young man to come on up. Come up to the board, do this problem. And he's 13, he may be experiencing something right there. You may say, why? No, we can't get into why right now. He's experiencing, I can't stand up right now. Yeah. I'm orderly right now. Come to the front of this class, you work this arithmetic. It's like, Miss Muhammad, can I do it can I explain it right here? Being disrespectful. I'm going to tell your father. So it's little things like that teachers have to be a little conscious of it. Maybe a young lady. She may have her first menstrual cycle, menses. And she notices something. She has no pads and no nothing. You say, come on up. She's going to be standing up here talking like this. It's like that, come on. So we have to be very thoughtful about those type of things, especially educators. Any other questions, comments, corrections? I think I made a mistake on something. Brother Rafiq.
Yeah, in your book, do you give any suggestions about how you address some of the challenges that should be applied to the youth to try to keep them away from, making mistakes?
Is it something specific? Because yes, to answer the question, yes, but something specific you're saying?
No.
It's not every scenario.
Okay.
But a lot of it has to do with spirituality. It has to be like something inside you. So again, we can talk about the law I mentioned, the Texas law, the Supreme Court ruling on. We can get into a lot of that, but it has to come the person has to we have to help young people and of course ourselves have a better relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so what happens a lot of times, we don't really have really strong a relationship with Allah. It's rote memory. It's like I do it, I cover, I got my thobe, and it's like not a close relationship. And so Tawbah, the thoughts, that's going back to building a relationship ideally with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that could be the protection. When you have that relationship, that close relationship. Brother Muhammad?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that it's basically early as possible infiltration, early involvement with the child. This focuses on parenting, whatever the case may be, but the issue is to introduce these values to the child early and be consistent about it. And the community has an obligation to support and organize around that for institutions, like we're here right now in terms of school, right, and things like that, to support that. So it's both an individual and a collective responsibility, but the key is early.
Early as possible, no question, no question. And of course, keeping in mind that people don't come in early all the time. So I may have taken my Shahada at 33, at 46, 17, what have you. You know, so, but that's a good point. As early as possible, we have to try to instill these things in our children. And then also, we get into a little bit like some educators, be very careful with trying to relate. Sometimes you can try to relate to kids and you get into personal stuff. Let me tell you this, young blood. Listen, man. I had a girlfriend back in the day. This is what happened. She got pregnant. I had to see. You start doing that. You got to be very thoughtful of that, because one of the things you always want to kind of keep is a type of, it's not absolute, but a type of moral authority. We got to keep that, not perfection or anything like that, but when you start trying to break down your life history, and people hear that like, he used to do what? She used to do what? I may not be receptive to as much to you now. It's like, because I know you was doing this, and so like, and you trying to give me advice? That's how normal human beings are. Now, of course, a 15-year-old should just take the information, and if it's accurate, but that's just not how people are. So that's why it's another, be careful when we talking to kids, even parents. You don't want to be giving your whole life story, you know. You give them something, but not like, you don't want to lose that edge, that moral authority edge. That's my personal suggestion. You know, we got to be really careful with that. And sometimes we try to identify so much from, I know what you're going through. This is what happened to me. I got 2 girls pregnant at the same time, and I didn't know what to do. He's like, oh, what? Like, you did what? Like, you don't want to. Then we also get into, of course, as educators, you got to be really careful with, especially the opposite gender, liking you, because that's an issue with educators. That's an issue. You know, you teaching a young lady, Mel, you teaching a young lady, and she got a crush on you. So you got to be careful meeting alone with her. She said, I need help, Mr. Ukta, I need help with this class. I need help. So, you know what, come to my office, sweetie, and we'll I don't know about that. Alone? You know, so, no. So we got to be careful of all that stuff. So hopefully the educators can benefit from it. Hopefully the children can benefit from it. One young man, he told me, he was like, I guess he's like 14 or 15. He came to me, I think at the last Majlis town hall at Masjid Muhammad. No, the second to last. The second one. And he said, you know, I read your book. I said, alhamdulillah. He said, you wrote it more like an uncle versus an actual teacher. So I said, I didn't think of that. I wasn't necessarily trying to do that, to be honest. But that's good to hear. He said, yeah, it was really good. He started breaking down some of the parts that he read, actually. I was like, okay, that's, you know, alhamdulillah, that's pretty good. You know, so trying to be of some kind of benefit. Any other questions in the last couple minutes? Questions, comments, any kind of corrections? Not a question.
Sorry, I came in late. I don't know, what did you say? Did you say anything about sexuality? I didn't hear you talk last year. I'm just getting this part this year.
Yeah, like talking about getting to like more like homosexuality a little bit.
Homosexuality, gender.
Yeah, we did. It's a chapter, gender and shukr, because one of the biggest things is if you have wherever you are, male or female, and I ain't getting the hermaphrodite right now, so just male or female, like 90% of us, you have to be thankful. And so sometimes at the root, people, they're not thanking Allah for what they have. You are a male. There's a blessing in that. You are a female. There's a blessing in that. Allah didn't make a mistake. And so when people are going through these things, at the root, see, really, that's what most scholars say. At the root of all these issues is going to be diseases of the heart. That's what tomorrow. That's what you're going to go back to. It's all going to go back to that. Bukhul, you know, miserliness, you know, batar, like wantonness, riyah, showing off. Hasad, envy. So it's all going to go back to that kind of stuff. And so you have to be thankful for what you are, who you are. I ain't talking about your personality, like stuff like you're ignorant and be thankful for. No, I ain't talking about that. I'm saying just your natural fitra. Be thankful that you're a male. Be thankful that you're a female. You know? And so we get into it from that standpoint. Yeah, gender and shukr. Yep. Sister, Nabila?
Yes, what was the term you said when the person either tells their wrongdoing or?
Mujahideen.
Public, was that word? again?
Mujahideen. Not muhajirin. Mujahideen. Yeah.
Okay, I thought about,
Because go ahead, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I thought about how Allah's wisdom in classifying those behaviors because it tears apart society. When you openly do wrong and act like it's okay. The other thing I thought of, but I was trying to guess when you said the word, and I was like, oh, I think that means such. But I thought about the people who know something is wrong and classify it as okay. You know it's wrongdoing.
Yeah.
But you go around and tell everybody, but so what if yeah, that's cool, I could do that. That's another, to me, that's related to that other word that you,
Yeah. No, that's a good point. And if I could say real quickly, I try to be real fast with this. Some scholars have broken down taqwa, right? God consciousness. Actually, the brother mentioned it in the last couple sessions ago. But taqwa, it says 5 levels of taqwa. So these are more like we call darajat, not maqamat, in a sense. So like different levels of taqwa. And this is an interesting thing. The first level of God consciousness is Islam. So everyone who's Muslim, you have to have some level of consciousness because you said La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, right? But the second level, and this is where it gets thinner, is Tawbah. Because remember, every Muslim don't make Tawbah. Now you don't start assuming, oh, he don't do it, she don't. No, I ain't saying that. But I'm saying, but every Muslim don't make Tawbah for their sins. So that's another level of consciousness. Then another level is al-wara'u, scrupulousness, very carefulness when you stand away from the doubtful matters. That's another level. Then another level you say is zuhd, which is like, that's really high level, like when you stand away from the makruh, the undesirable things, and the ibah, and the mubah stuff, the permissible things outside of intentions, good intentions. And then the last is mushahada. My point is, what happens if we, in our community, not just this, in the Muslim community, really in the world, we have people on different levels talking to different people on other levels, and sometimes it's like oil and water. And we just got to always be conscious. Sometimes people may not be there. Maybe I'm not at that mushahada level. I know I'm not, actually. And so it's like we got to be conscious of course, the audience. Now, we don't know everybody here, but I'm talking about when you're talking to someone privately, be very thoughtful, because there's some Muslims who they don't make tawbah. So when you're trying to talk about tawbah, it's like, I don't even know what you're talking about, really. So be very thoughtful of that kind of stuff. So, inshallah. Can I say this last thing real quick?
Yeah, sure.
So this is going to be a class, inshallah, a Zoom presentation, I'll say. Majlis Ash-Shura, I'll be giving it, inshallah, in mediation based on Islamic principles, a company that started like 5-6 years ago, whatever. And so on volunteering with ihsan. And so many of us have volunteered, obviously, got education committee, volunteers and stuff. Whether you run a nonprofit, a masjid, whatever it is, it's gonna be some slides basically. So some slides that we'll be going through, getting into a lot of different things. We'll get into stuff like with bylaws, we get into niyyah, intentions, stuff like all that kind of stuff. So volunteering with ihsan. The show's August 12th, Monday night, like late afternoon, 6:15 to 8 o'clock, inshallah. There's some flyers out there on the Majlis table. We'll put on the Majlis website, inshallah. Be on some social media, inshallah. So shukran, jazakallahu khairan.
Thank you, brother. Yes, sir. Again, this is, I'll read it off. Volunteering with Ihsan, a Zoom presentation with question and answer by the Majlis Ash-Shura of the Delaware Valley, and mediation based on Islamic principles. That's mediation BIP, the brother's company. Please register by simply emailing your interest to mediationvip@gmail.com or go to news@phillymajlis.com. That's news spelled N-E-W-S, not with a Z, right? news@phillymajlis.com. Zoom access, the code is on here too. If you just pick up the sheet, the Zoom access code is on here. You can just plug that in. And that's Monday, August 12th, 2024, 6:15 p.m. to 8 p.m. So you can pick these up at his table, at the Majlis table in the atrium. So just one thing came to my mind. You were talking about the different levels of taqwa, faith. That makes me think about like marriage. You're talking about people being on different levels. Are you doing a follow-up, or is there a component of the book that talks about marriage? Are you going something like that?
I wasn't thinking that, to be honest. Like I said, we get into, I think the second or the last chapter is on khitma engagement.
Well,
It's kind of
do I get a cut?
Say again? Say again?
It's not thought of it. Do I get?
Talk to the referee. So, but that's a good point. I mean, I don't know. I wasn't thinking of it, to be honest.
I'm either. So, okay. So, that, inshallah, thank you for coming. The next session will be in here at 2:25, inshallah. This next session will be on special education and IEP's individual educational plans, about start to finish, from observation to conclusion, I think it's called, something like that. But the whole IEP special education process will be here, inshallah, 2:25. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
All right, assalamu alaikum, everybody.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Our presentation is called From Observation to IEP, because we want you all to just know what the process is like from the moment you identify areas of need in your students or area needs in your children, all the way through to if your child needs or the student needs an IEP. So we just want to just give you a brief idea of what the whole process is like.
I found that in my 31 years, which 26 was spent being a special ed teacher, that parents come in, they're given all this information and really don't understand the process. They're signing off on things because, have a bunch of educated people standing in front of you telling you these things, but you walk away just knowing that your kid qualified for an IEP or did not qualify for an IEP. So, education is always the best tool. So, I am Val Abdul, as you see. I have 31, I'm retired. Well, not really. My children said I retired just to get a party, but I'm still working. I retired after 31 years of teaching. I hold 4 certifications in different areas, starting from high school down to elementary school, special ed, and highly qualified in social sciences. I have a master's degree too, and I was a doctoral candidate at LaSalle. What else did I put up here that I don't know? I was director, I wrote the curriculum, which is still in use for Masjid Allah Madrasa Islamiyah. I was the director of that program for 9 years. They still use the curriculum today, but they tweaked it to fit what, more technologically involved. I wrote the curriculum and I oversaw it for 9 years. I also currently work at Expo Academy. I'm an instructional coach there, which I'm not retired.
All right, assalamu alaikum, everybody. I am Jamila, aka the IEP coach. I'm not going to read everything here. I've been working in special education for 20 years now. I'm a former special education teacher and special education supervisor. Currently, I run my company, the IEP Coach. We're an ed consulting company, and we focus on special education centered support for teachers as well as parents. I was a presenter at this year's Autism in Black Conference. I created the Master the IEP System and the Special Educators Rise group coaching program is specifically for special education teachers, and I'm the author of Because of Her. It's a true story of what it was like growing up with a sibling with a disability, told from the sibling's perspective, because you don't hear about their experience. I love to travel, I love the arts, I love community service, and I'm a huge advocate of children with special needs. All right.
This is our agenda, the things that we hope to get covered. We have a guiding question for you. We have our learning objectives. An objective is something that we hope to achieve. Our goal is to have you walk away understanding the process of from observation to possibly an IEP. Our learning objectives are to take you through each process so that you can have an understanding of that process within itself. We have icebreakers normally. Content, we have a guiding question. The guiding question is something that they use in education to get you to start thinking about thinking, okay? So as you read. I don't want to sit up and read a PowerPoint, reading from my perspective and understanding. That drives me crazy when you have someone that presents a PowerPoint and they read like you're
just regurgitating
what you say. It's boring. Okay. All right. And then we'll end with you having questions. Again, you have paper and pencil available. Just write down your questions and we'll have time for Q&A when we're done.
And then we also have a bonus for you guys. So we have a takeaway for you to take away from this presentation as well. All right, so our guiding question to you is, how do we go from noticing a student's learning difficulties to creating and using an IEP to support them? How do you think we go through that? How do you go from observing, noticing, okay, I'm noticing my child's having some difficulty, or I'm noticing my student is having trouble with something. How do we go from there to an IEP? Like, what do you think has to happen? And we are asking you this question. What do you think has to happen? So how do we go from you're noticing a need, you're noticing they're having some difficulty, to using that and getting an IEP to support them? How do we go from that to the IEP? Yes?
Assessment.
Assessments. Anybody else?
Some part of it has to be validating the observation.
Validating the observation. Did you have a question? I'm sorry. Oh. Anybody else? Don't be scared. We're not going to bite you. Yes.
Discover what resources might be available to help them.
Okay, what resources are available to help them? Anybody else?
Anyone?
Don't be scared. It's okay. All right, so you guys gave some great suggestions. Yes? Talk to their parents. Okay, good. All right, so we're going to go through the process now. We're going to come back to this question towards the end.
Again, these are objectives. The objective is something that we hope that you could walk away with an understanding of that process. It is a tiered system, and we're going to explain what the tiered system is about. We're going to look at how you start an evaluation and how you get to that IEP. And then we're going to go over the IEP itself is a separate entity. It's a development process involved with school psychologists and everybody else sitting at the table and the parent being totally confused.
And then we're going to go into the IEP meeting, what should happen. So we're basically we're telling you the correct process of how it should be. Do keep in mind, your charter school, your public school, they may do it differently, but we are telling you this is, by law, this is the way it's supposed to be, just so you know, leaving here, how things are supposed to be. All right, so we have a little icebreaker. So it's called this or that. So if you prefer over-the-ear headphones, give us a thumbs up. If you prefer earbuds, stand up. So if you prefer over-the-ear headphones, thumbs up. Earbuds, stand up. Okay, I like earbuds because they can be under my hijab. You don't even know I got them on, so that's what I like. All right. Okay, pizza, thumbs up. A cheesesteak, stand up. Pizza, thumbs up. A cheesesteak, stand up. I'm pizza all day. I can have that breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Oh, y'all like the cheesesteak?
Where you from? Philly.
All right, a hoodie, thumbs up. A windbreaker, stand up. So you prefer a hoodie, thumbs up. A windbreaker, stand up. I love hoodies.
Yeah.
I'm a hoodie person. All right, and this is our last one. Ice cream, thumbs up. Water ice, stand up.
Ice cream is what? Stand up?
Water ice. Water ice. You might say icy. You from New York. You like to say icy. We say water ice.
I like both.
All right. Thank you for participating in our icebreaker. So we're gonna go into our presentation. All right.
Can I kind of
go ahead?
The icebreaker is that we can say that people like different things. And think of a student being in a classroom. One size does not fit most, less all. Special education is a process. It's a process in which schools modify instruction, identify, modify instructions for students who have learning differences or who have encountered, you see them at risk. You may see the student in your class is not achieving, always absent. So at that point, it's time for the school to intervene. So special ed is not a thing, it is a process. And the process is to help to students to be identified and receive special individualized instruction so that they can achieve to their own potential.
So keep in mind, special education is not a place, it's a service. So special education services can happen in the general education classroom, they can happen in a special education classroom, they can happen in the counselor's office. It's not a place, it is a service. So always keep that in mind. So this is a quote, progress isn't always measured on paper, but the paperwork begins the process. And this is Mama Jamma?
Mama Jamma.
Yeah, okay, I wanted to make sure I said it.
I added the last because in this quote, it did not, to me, when I read it, part of it, it does, because you have to monitor the progress.
Yes.
And that was the point that I added on it, that people tend to forget that once a child has gone into receiving services, you have to look and keep data and watch and see if that child's progressing. So that's why I added the end to it.
And just like in anything in your life, if you're, like when you go to the doctor or you get physical therapy or something, you track your progress. How is this helping me? And you gotta look at special education the same way for your child. Is this helping my child? If this is not helping my child, okay, we need to go back and see what is going to help my child, okay? All right.
So in these, well, I want to ask you, for the people that can see it, what do you think is happening in the commonality between these three pictures? What's the commonality?
You have a teacher helping them.
Teacher helping them.
What are all the teachers doing?
What are the teachers doing? There's a verb going on here.
Observing.
Observation.
Absolutely.
Observation.
And that's like the first step in anything. You have to see like, well, what's the problem here? What's going on here?
And before you make the referral, you have to observe. You observe for various reasons. Your lack of progress, which is a big thing, attendance or their truancy. You look for social adjustments. How is that child interacting with their peers and or adults within the program? The observation is done across various settings. You just don't go into a classroom and just watch the child. You watch this child and how they react across different settings, especially if you're looking for behavioral issues that may have come up. You have to monitor. You're taking data. Here's where the data starts. You're looking at the intervals. How long, when does this happen? How long does this behavior go on? You're looking at the environment. Could possibly be the trigger? All these things get answered through observation, are observed through observation. You're building data, and you're going on the referral that you were given to build a case for what that person may have said. The people who can report in an observation or ask for a referral can be a social worker, can be a teacher, can be the parent themselves. It could be maybe the lunchroom lady, that brings note to the teacher that they see a certain behavior from this child. So observation is the first step in evaluation.
All right. Go ahead.
RTI, and these are the intervention programs that you may start. You look at, after your observation, you make that decision and decide RTI or MTSS. MTSS, they're different, as you say. It's early identification. It's looking at the teachers to change what you call different. You ever heard the term differentiated instruction? Does that teacher need to employ differentiated instruction? These two things provide early and systematic, intense instruction for struggling students and for students who are possibly at risk. They both consist, MTSS and RTI are different. MTSS intervenes early to help the student catch up with their peers, and this process screens all of the students. The RTI is a little bit different because you're looking at the struggling students, and it provides early intervention for those students with, and again, intense, appropriate instruction. They both consist of 3 tiers. There's 3 levels for this process. Oh, I have to back up. MTSS also looks at behavior where RTI doesn't put that emphasis on behavior. And that's the difference between the two.
And you already did this.
Yes.
And you did this.
Up to explain that. Okay. Now, PBIS looks at behavior. It's the RTI for behavior. You're monitoring the student's behavior and seeing what changes you possibly needs to be implemented to change that behavior. That's what you're looking at. You want to change the behavior, but through a positive system. You want to offer possible rewards. You want to look at what are the triggers. So when you're doing a positive behavioral support, you know, you look at how is this behavior affecting their learning, and how does it affect the teacher's instructional program. You cannot teach when you have a child who's upsetting the classroom environment.
So yeah, so if a child has behavioral needs, and if sometimes parents are like, well, I want this addressed in an IEP. If it is not impeding their education or the education of others, it won't be in the IEP. A behavior has to impede their education or the education of others. So it could be this child is having meltdowns, and there's a reason they're having meltdowns in their classroom. So that's impeding their education because they can't finish whatever it is they need to do, and it's impeding other children's education because other children may stop to try to help that student, or it's interrupting their learning. They can't continue to learn.
This is more, PBIS is more geared for those children who have social and emotional issues.
All right, here's the tier.
All right, here's the tier. Tier 1, as you say, is the support for all students. This is where your differentiated instruction come in. You might be a visual learner, this person may be an auditory learner, this person may be kinesthetic, or a combination of both. So how do I, as a teacher, instruct and get them what they need? And that's usually looking at when they do global, the first part of the school year, there's usually some type of diagnostic that the children complete. I don't know if all districts do it, but mainly all do. And that diagnostic tells, is this student on grade level? Does this student could possibly have a problem with retention? So you're doing that for all students, and that's in tier 1, to see how you can give developmental and grade appropriate instruction. That's what you're looking for.
And this is what all teachers are doing. All teachers do tier 1 interventions for everybody because everybody is in tier 1.
In tier 2 gives, after you finish tier 1, you've looked at your data and you've made a decision about certain children may need help. Then they go into 2, but this instruction provides additional support, small group. You might say, okay, everybody, is having problems with understanding verbs. I'm gonna pull these 5 students over here and get them to work on verbs. But you still are addressing the needs of the class, or you might be making a referral at this point. These 5 students aren't just getting it. And they may, well, you ever heard of them called pull out? When they pull students out of class and they go out. This is what tier 2 does. Tier 2 focuses on the at-risk student in a small group setting.
So also with tier 2, teachers have to follow the process. So after tier 1, you're doing the interventions in the classroom and you're saying, okay, these students are still not making progress. I have my data. And when you go to tier 2, you need to have at least 6 weeks of data to present to the team to say, okay, this is not working, I've done boom, boom, boom. And it's not just one thing you've tried, it's multiple things you have done in tier 1 interventions. So when you come to your tier 2 meeting, you have your data with you, and the team will make the teacher will make a nomination. I want the student to get additional, more intense intervention in tier 2. Now, a lot of times you have some schools, they'll skip this step, like, oh, we need to go to tier 2, and it's like, where's your data to support they need more intervention? Because you always want to have data, because depending on the intervention, we may need to get some consent from the parent, because it could be, hey, the kid needs counseling at school. We might want to do some at-risk counseling at school. We need the parent's permission to do that. So you want to make sure you have your data, and this is something we stress to teachers all the time. Don't skip this step. Always have at least 6 weeks of data, because you had at least over a month of data to say, it's not just, oh, it happened this week or it was 2 weeks. No, you have over a month of data to support, okay, this is not working or this is working for the student.
And that data addresses the challenges that you found in tier 1. So that's why it's very important to keep, you will hear terms, and we'll talk about a little bit later, progress monitoring. That's the data that's needed, charts and graphs and assessments as you go through this process. So as she says, it's 6 weeks and you're looking for improvement. Then you move on once those first two have not worked. Then you go to tier 3, which is 3 to 5% of the students, where they now get individualized support. The results are taken from the tier 1 and tier 2 data to make the determination, do you move on to tier 3? This again is things like your PSSAs, your Keystones, all of the state tests that are being taken. That's part of the data that's considered as important as part of this RTI and MTSS process.
Also, like any intervention programs, like let's say they use the Wilson or they use corrective reading, whatever intervention that was being used, that data is in tier 2 as well, because tier 3, it's like students who have IEPs are in tier 3. So this is not their entire school. So this is where you're also making the decision is being made. Do we need to move forward and start the IEP process because we've done tier 1, it's not working. We've done tier 2 and it's not working. Maybe we need to go to tier 3, and again, you have your data from tier 1 and tier 3 to support, and tier 2 to support, do we need to do a tier 3 nomination? And then if it is, then that's when the IEP process, the evaluation process would start, because it could be something else is hindering the student from learning, or it could be something genetic that the student has, and we need to get other services, and maybe outside services that we need to get for this student.
And the final step also, when I shared with you, that MTSS includes the positive behavior support. So that system also is a part of this tiered system. It supports them academic, socially, emotionally, and mentally health for improvement. You set clear, this is where you set clear behavioral expectations. And it supports the student, again, to help their basic needs, because a student cannot learn if he's not or she is not in a mental state or socially being impeded on their progress. This calls for, again, will be a part, determine should this be a part of that IEP, and that child would they fit into the tier 3, into the third part of the tier system. This is done in the MTSS. RTI is just really the first 2.
Okay. So now we're going to go into the IEP evaluation process. And so with the IEP evaluation process, you start off with your PTE, which is a permission to evaluate. Then, and with the permission to evaluate, this is basically, we're getting permission from the parent to start the actual evaluation process, and it will list what type of evaluation. Is this a full-scale evaluation, meaning they're going to do psychological testing? They may do also testing with a related service provider. You may need occupational therapy or speech or counseling. We're trying to see like what all that your child needs. So that will be listed on the PTE, what type of testing are going to be done. Sign it. When you sign it, you're basically giving consent for the school to start the actual process.
As a parent, you can ask for your child to be evaluated too. You can write a short letter, send it to their counselor, take it directly to the principal, whoever we're gonna talk about LEA.
Yeah, we're gonna go
into that. But parents can request it, and if the evaluation process cannot be done without parent permission.
Right, they cannot start any type of testing without your consent. So also as parents, please pay attention to what you sign and always ask for a copy of everything that you sign, because sometimes it may be presented a certain way and you're like, oh, this isn't, you don't think it is an evaluation, and they're actually giving you the form and you're signing it, but you're thinking you're signing something else. So please pay attention to what you sign and always ask for copies of everything that you sign. So after the PTE is the evaluation process. We're going to go into that. Then it's the IEP, which stands for Individualized Education Plan, and then it goes into the IEP meeting. So we're going to break out each one. So you want to do these?
The PTE, as we already explained, is permission to evaluate. It cannot be done without the parent's permission or guardian, whoever. So sometimes, you know, it's parents or guardian who is responsible
Whoever
for the
has legal
child.
guardianship.
Legal guardianship. Once that consent is received, the process of evaluation can begin. A team is formed. On that team, you may have, it's multidisciplinary. You will have the teacher, you'll have the school psychologist, the parents, of course, the counselor, therapist if needed, like we said, for related services.
And we're going to go into that too, just so you can see the IEP team.
This is the team that will make a decision if that child should receive an IEP or not, and if they even qualify for the IEP. So remember, you're a part of a team.
And also, once the PTE is signed, the psychologist has 60 days to get that evaluation completed. So keep that in mind too.
The other thing is 60 school days.
60 school days.
Not the weekends or.
So yes, 60 school days. So you're not counting the weekends,
done.
You're counting 60 school days. All right, so now we're gonna go into the evaluation part. So PTE has been signed. Let's say you signed it, you agree, you signed it. The process is gonna start, and now we're gonna go into the evaluation.
All right, the evaluation is the foundation of the development of the IEP. The evaluation drives the IEP. This is done to gather relevant functional information and developmental information, including from the parent or guardian. So when you get signed as P, you may have the school psychologist or somebody reach out. Tell me about your child growing up. When did they start walking? When did they start talking? So that information, and sometimes people get offended.
Deep, yeah,
they get deep
personal
because they get personal. Is the father around? Is the mother around? You know,
and it's
how
not
many siblings are in the house?
And they're not doing
order.
it to be rude. It's just they're getting all the cultural information about this child because something traumatic could have happened, which could be the causes why the child is having certain difficulties. So that's why they do ask it. But some parents do find it offensive because they're like, well, they were so short with me. They were so, and I explain to parents, you know, I understand. It's just they have to get that information, and just so they can include it in the report.
Some of the testing they look at is cognitive. Some of the tests they use are for cognitive or behavior. Actually, I'll just run through a few. You have a BASC, which that is given to, if you're talking about a behavioral issue, it may come home to you. It'll go to the teacher. It may go to a counselor. That's looking at the child's behavior.
It will go to them.
It will go to them.
It'll go to them. It's definitely going to go to you. It will.
It will.
It's going to go to you and the teacher. And depending on perhaps if it's a certain location where the behavior is happening all the time, that the staff in that area, in that environment, will get a BASC as well. And it's like a checklist. It's asking you these questions. How often? Is it rare? Rarely it happens. So be 100% honest on that. And sometimes with those, we'll see, oh, the behavior is happening at home, not really at school. Or it could be, it don't happen at home, it happens at school.
These things are just looking for triggers and possible causes. You have the WISC, which is an intelligence scale, and that's used on children from the age of 6 to 16. You have the cognitive, you have the Kaufman, which covers from 4 years to 25 years, so adults can even be tested using Kaufman. You have the weights for children that's over 16. You have the Woodcock-Johnson, which is the Johnson test of achievement, looking at how much has this child learned, what has this child learned.
Yeah.
The Connors rating scale, again, is usually for behavior. That's another tool for behavior and for students or children who have autism, who are actually suspected to be on the autistic scale. And then you have the autistic spectrum scale, which tests children who are autistic. And then the eligibility determination meeting comes after all this testing is done, after all this, again, data, because the evaluation drives the IEP. The IEP is written based on the data that is received and the final initial evaluation report. So having all that information to get together with this multidisciplinary discipline team is really important because, again, that's what drives the IEP.
And also during this time, especially if it's a full-scale related service providers will come in too to do testing. So especially if your child is suspected of having autism, you definitely want to get a speech evaluation. You definitely want to get an occupational therapy evaluation as well. So they will do their testing as well, and that will be included in the evaluation.
And you have the right to ask for those, because if you see those behaviors and think at home, you can request that I would like to have my child tested for hearing, to be
Physical
a part
therapy,
of this physical therapy. I'm suspecting.
Counseling at school.
So you have the right as a parent and or guardian to request to have those services, those testing, those assessments done.
And then like Sister Valda said, once completed, the parent gets notified, the psychologist notifies the parent, and the psychologist, sometimes they will go over the results with the parent over the phone, but they will be at the IEP meeting, and they go over the results there, but they do have to notify the parent that the evaluation has been completed, and they will go over the results with the parent. All right, so now we're gonna go to the IEP part. So after the psychologist has completed the evaluation report, the special education teacher is then notified, like, oh, so-and-so's evaluation has been completed. That special education teacher has 30 days to complete the IEP. And basically the evaluation, like Sister Valda said, it's driving that IEP. So that SPED teacher is gonna look at the evaluation, and what's in the evaluation, the results, those are recommended suggestions that you can take. That doesn't mean you have to go with it. They're recommendations. So the IEP will be drafted based off of the recommendations in the evaluation. So if the evaluation says, oh, they highly suggest that the student does a learning support type classroom with pullouts, or stays in the classroom, or needs speech, we're gonna use that to create goals. We're gonna include all that information in the IEP, what modifications they need, what accommodations they may need. All of that is going to go into the IEP, and the IEP is it's a draft. It is not the finalized document. And also best practice, teachers should put the draft watermark on it, just so you know it's a draft, or even physically write draft on it so they know it is a draft, because sometimes parents think, oh, you did this without me. It's like, no, it's a draft. We don't want you to think that it has been that we've already made this decision for you. And then also after the IEP has been completed, we schedule the IEP meeting. Basically someone will contact you, ask you when are you available to come in for a meeting. We also will send home an invitation to participate. So basically it's going to have the time of the meeting, where it's going to be located, all of that. If that conflicts with your schedule, you write on that, like, listen, I work on at this time. Can you do so-and-so date? So that is your time. And also, let's say you can't do steps. Please put that in. There is a space on the invitation to participate if you need support, like, okay, I can't do steps, so we make sure we're on the first floor. We'll make sure the meeting is on the first floor. Or we may need to do a virtual meeting if you physically can't come into the building. Put that information on your invitation. And also, you should always get your procedural safeguards every time you have an IEP meeting. The procedural safeguards is this thick document. It basically tells you your rights as a parent. It tells you what agencies and supports you have in your county that can support you. And I'm just gonna say, basic in a nutshell, in the event you need to sue the school, sue the charter school, whatever. All that information is in the procedural safeguards, and it is very important that you read through it. I highly suggest, if you do have children or grandchildren with an IEP, take a couple days, do like a couple pages a day, because it is a thick document. It is, but it's giving you all the information you need, your rights as the guardian, your rights as the parent.
The IEP is a legal, federal, binding document. Whatever goes into that IEP and is agreed upon, the school district, they are,
or the charter network, whatever you're in,
whoever, they are held accountable for that document. During the IEP meeting, you ask any questions. This is the time for you to ask questions. This is the time for you to give your opinion, because you know your child better than anybody sitting at that table. So you have the input. Your input is very important.
Very, very important. And also what we wanted to stress too is after the evaluation, your child may not need an IEP, but they can get support through a 504 plan. We just wanted to let you know that those are options, because there are some kids, they may have had an IEP and early intervention, but they don't qualify when they come into the school because they don't show a need. You can request to get a 504 plan, and they can get accommodations through that. And they can get classroom accommodations, testing accommodations, and also as an adult, you can have a 504 plan, because 504 plans are covered under the Civil Rights Act, so they can't discriminate against anyone who has a disability. So like there are teachers who have 504 plans. Like I worked with teachers.
I had a teacher that was
They
partially
had-
blind, and they had to accommodate him in his classroom with a larger computer screen
I
that
had,
you could see.
I want to say 2 colleagues, they had bad arthritis, so their classroom had to be on the first floor. They couldn't do a bunch of steps. So even as an adult, you can have a 504 plan at your job. So if you, because you can do the job, but you may need an accommodation. So 504s applies to students as well as adults. All right, so we're going to go into the last part, which is the IEP meeting. And parents, you can request a draft of that IEP be sent to you. You can say, can you send it to me 2 days before, so that way you have time to review it, you can mark it up, write your questions on it, so that way when you come, you know for sure, like, listen, can we, you may say, okay, I understand what's going on in here. I want us to mainly focus on this part because I have questions. If there's a certain, let's say, subject that your child struggles in, you can request to have that teacher come to the meeting. I've had a lot of teachers, parents request certain teachers to come because they may be having difficulty with that teacher, like, how come you can't accommodate my child, or how come you're not modifying this or that, so they can actually come. And we're going to go into IEP team members.
Can I add to, you're going into members. Yeah. I wanted to add that once you get to secondary school, a regular ed teacher has to be a part of the meeting as well.
Every single IEP meeting, I'm going to go into the team members so you can see. So the IEP team is the student, the parent or guardian, the LEA, which is local education agency, so that majority of the time is the principal or it may be the assistant principal. You have the general education teachers. You only need 1 to attend, but every time I had an IEP meeting, I always invited that kids, all of their teachers. So whoever can come. The special education teacher, the nurse, the guidance counselors. If your child receives related services like speech, occupational therapy, physical therapy, they are on the IEP team. Outside providers, your child might have counseling outside of school. They may have therapy outside of school. It could be speech or something else. You can invite them to the IEP meeting. Caseworkers have come to meetings. We've had social workers come to meetings. Even times we have coaches come because they have a good relationship with that student, and they can come to the meeting because they can give us some input on how to reach a kid in a way that they can and we can't. And also, like for the school psychologist is always on the team, especially for the initial IEP meeting, because they need to explain that evaluation report, but also they are always on the team. They may not be at every IEP meeting, but they are always on the IEP team. And for the initial IEP, parents, nothing can get started unless you sign the NORAP. For an annual, it's a little different, but that initial one, nothing will get started unless you agree and give consent.
Oh, can I digress for a minute?
Go ahead.
There also, you can have an advocate. If you're someone that feels intimidated, or you're sitting in front of all these people and they're throwing all these terms, and you read the draft as you requested, can I have a draft, and you don't understand, you can bring an advocate. I have been an advocate for friends who have had children that have had IEPs. So you can bring someone with you, and they too would have to sign on that document. They have to be willing to sign because they're participating in that meeting. Give them the understanding you're going to have to sign off on it as well.
So and in regards to sign off, they're just signing off the attendance that they have been there. Yeah. So a lot of times that's the first thing you do when you come to an IEP meeting. I don't want you to think like, oh, I'm already signed, I don't want to sign. It's like, no, this is just attendance. Who is here for the meeting? So definitely let the school know ahead of time if you do have an advocate, just so they can have their name already listed on the IEP. Also, if you are co-parenting, please provide both addresses to the school. And also, if you're sharing custody with the other parent, we can share that same information with the school. If it's a situation where, hey, let's say you, Brother Khalil, you have custody of your kids, and it's like, okay, we don't have no contact with mom. We have to have documentation stating that, and then we only communicate with you. Now, if you don't have anything like that, we have the right to communicate with the other parent because they have parental rights. We won't do that unless we have documentation stating, because I'm just sharing this because I've had a couple moms like, I don't want the dad. I'm like, with all due respect, I understand. However, do you have paperwork saying that we cannot communicate because they have parental rights? So they have rights to still know when their child has an IEP meeting. Same thing, they have parental rights.
Also with that too, if you have an incarcerated parent, you can we have set up a meeting where at times that it's a lot of work, but it should be done because that parent is still a part of that child's life and they have their parental rights, that they can be in the phone conference.
Yeah, you can't do that.
You can't. It's a lot of work.
That's if you want. If they just prefer to communicate through the mom or through the dad, you do that. I've had it where a dad just reached out to us, and we was literally, I would say it was like we was writing letters every month. We would sit the student in front of us. What do you want us to tell your dad? Like, what do you want to tell your dad? What do you want to tell your mom? And we were writing back and forth to parents that were incarcerated just so they know how their children are doing in school. All right, so at the IEP meeting, the first thing is take attendance. So please don't be alarmed if you start signing. You're only stating that you were there at the meeting. The psychologist is going to explain the results. So definitely parents, if you're like, I don't even know what that test is, can you explain it? Please ask. I'm betting there's so many IEP meetings, the parents are quiet, and I'm kind of talking for them. So remember that question you asked me, Ms. So-so? Like, ask the question, like, no question is dumb. Just ask whatever question that you have. And again, the results of that evaluation is recommendations. You don't have to go with it. You may say, okay, I'm fine with my child getting the extra support, but I don't feel my child needs speech, or I don't feel my child needs something else. You have the right to do that. And then we would just go into the IEP and adjust. If you don't want it, we would make that adjustment in the IEP. So at the IEP meeting, the teachers will share their input. Parents, you will share your input. And the SPAD teacher will explain that drafted IEP. So the first IEP meeting is very long because they should go through every section of that IEP just so you are aware and familiar with it. So after they go through the IEP, then they're going to present something called the NOREP. The NOREP stands for Notice of Recommended Education Placement. This is what makes the IEP a legally binding document, because once you sign that, parent, you are giving consent for this IEP to be put into play. That is what makes it legal. You signing your attendance, that doesn't make it a whole legal thing. Once you sign the NOREP, it does. So the NOREP will state the programming and the placement that's being recommended, is going to have what have we tried already? Why hasn't it worked? Literally all of that is documented on the NOREP. If this is an initial IEP, that's on the NOREP. If you are exiting a kid from special education, that will be on the NOREP. So you want to make sure your NOREP definitely lists what you are there for. It's going to list what data was used to create this IEP. That's going to be in the NOREP. And any programs, any placement, all of that is in the NOREP. And then they'll ask you, do you agree with this IEP? Do you not agree with it? There's a space on the NOREP that you agree, you give consent. There's a space where I disagree. And what you need to do if you disagree. You're gonna sign it, date it, put your phone number. And again, remember, always get, even though they can send electronic copies, always get a physical copy of the IEP. Every time I would do IEP meetings, I sent the parent copies of every single thing that they signed. I give them copies of that invitation that they signed. You may need to take it to work to let them know you was at an IEP meeting. I give them copies of every single thing that they signed.
This is the first initial start in the process from observation to evaluation, but the IEP is an annual document. It gets reviewed every year. And also at time, as a parent, you have the right to always question the IEP, or if you don't see, like with progress monitoring, and you don't see that your child's making any progress, or there has been some changes, you as the parent has the right to call for an IEP. But each time you call for an IEP meeting, if there's any type of change whatsoever, a new NOREP is issued.
If it changes the
their
special
placement,
education
that's when
time,
they change
yeah.
the place.
If not, you just put an amendment.
As an example, if you have a child that's receiving learning support and they're getting pulled out, and it has been determined that now we'll just pull them out of learning support and make them, I don't know if they call it itinerant.
So let's say
itinerant
they're getting
support.
supplemental
That's
support,
supplemental.
meaning they're in the classroom less than 80, they're in the general education classroom more than, was it 70% of the time? They're in the classroom more than that. Let's say you're like, okay, you don't need to get pulled out as much, so that's gonna drop your special education time. Since it's gonna change the special education time, you have to do a new no-rep because the special education time has changed. You're getting less time. If it's something where I'm like, oh, you need some more testing accommodations, I have to call the parent and say, oh, Sister Ukta, I just want to know, is it okay for me to add these testing accommodations? I noticed that Muhammad needs them in class. If she says yes, I document on the IEP that I called her on so-and-so day, I changed this section of the IEP, then I go to that section, make the change, I add that, and I initial it. And then I send home the copy to the parent. I don't have to do a no-rep because their time stayed the same. I only added an accommodation. If it does not change their special education time, you can make an amendment. However, they need the permission from the parent. They can't make no changes to the IEP without your permission. So always remember that. They can't make no changes without your permission and your consent. All right, so identify a student's learning difficulties through thorough observation. Thorough, I can't stress that enough. It's not just a couple days of data. You have to have months of data and you have to be organized, keep it organized. You have to track your data. Is the student improving or are they not? If you see they are not, we have to make a change. We have to change the intervention. It may be, hey, they may need the intervention even more than what they're already getting. So you have to really document document the data through your school's response to intervention, RTI, or multi-tier support system, MTSS framework. And if needed, just because you go through RTI and MTSS, that doesn't mean your child needs an IEP. I don't want you to think like that's the goal, because sometimes for some teachers that's the goal. They're like, oh, once they get in, we got to get them an IEP, and that's not the goal of response to intervention or MTSS. The goal is give them the intervention, give them the support. Oh, they're doing better. They no longer need it anymore. The goal is not to have an IEP. So that's why I put if needed, then collaborate with the team members to create an IEP that's going to work for your child. All right, so we're going to go back to the guiding question. How do we go from noticing a student's learning difficulties to creating and using an IEP to support them? How do we do that? Observation. What else? What else? Definitely jot down the date and even the time and what was going on, because that can even help you. Just remember, you know what? I notice every time at dinner, my child don't want to eat something, like, because it could be a sensory thing, just noticing behaviors and things. So just have a notebook or whatever you want to use to just, jog your memory.
That's the one thing we were that first thing you're taught, and one of the most important things are write it down.
Yes.
Keep
document
that data.
everything.
Document. Some people find it laborious to have to do that, but that's your support.
Yeah.
To say on this day
that's
he
like your
came to
proof.
school. Yeah, you have to keep that. It's so important because that's your support. Again, reminding you that IEP is a legal binding document, and the more you can validate what's in there, the better off you be. You don't want to be sued. You don't want the district to be sued. So when you have that data, that's your validation of changes or of changes that's being made, of progress that's being made, or lack of progress that's being made.
We're getting to the questions. Just one more slide. I see. All right. So this is our AEIOU reflection. You don't have to answer all of these, but A stands for adjective. Think of a word that describes something you learned today. E is an emotion. How did the information make you feel? I is interesting. What is something you found interesting? O is what captured your attention? And U is what questions do you have? So you can answer either one of these letters. You don't got to do all of them. Does anybody want to share? their reaction. A, E, I, O, or U.
I'll share one, which leads to my question.
Okay.
My question leads to this. I would call it an emotion, maybe.
Okay.
And that is a little bit guarded. And my question was, does the IEP carry a stigma, and does it remain on the student's record?
I'll say the IEP, it can carry a stigma, especially if the school does not have a culture that is really inclusive of everyone, if you have needs or not. Because it really starts at the top with your leadership. If your leadership is not very inclusive and creates an environment where everyone, it doesn't matter where you are, everyone's learning, it doesn't matter if you got pulled out or anything like that, or even puts things into play where, like for instance, I taught at a middle school, they're very self-conscious if I'm getting pulled out, if I'm getting this. So like during an intervention block, everybody got pulled out of class. So it wasn't like, oh, you're going to that special class. No one knew you were going because everybody's getting pulled out. So if your school does not do things like that, then it will have a stigma because it gets to the point where some kids like, oh, you're special ed. And even though my grades could be way better than yours, but you calling me special ed, but okay. But you know what I mean? So it really depends on the culture of the school and the leadership of that school. Because you do have some schools, you still have some teachers who are operating from back in the day. Like special education is out of sight, out of mind. Those are your kids. These are not, my students are over here. Those are your students. Your students are over there for you to get. And it's like, no, these are our students. So it really, I'll say it really depends on your school and what your leadership definitely, I'll say, cultivates in the school.
And special ed is not an abyss. You get in it and you don't have to keep going deeper, it can be removed.
Okay.
Once students get out of high school,
once
they're out of high school, they're okay, and their IEP can follow them until they're 21. They can stay in school, but they won't graduate. They'll graduate, but the district holds their diploma until the finish. And again, that's based on what the parents, decide they want to do. But it is not an abyss. They get in and they can get out. So that stigma can
some people
not
think
stay.
that right
Yeah.
it's not meant for the rest of their education. Now some students, they have severe needs. They will always have an IEP. You have some students, I've had students, they had it in elementary, didn't have it in middle, or they had it like in the elementary, in the middle of middle school, they no longer had it. So if you really need it, and this is why you need to track the progress of the IEP. So I should be slowly removing things from your child's IEP, of course having data to support why I'm removing it, because then the IEP is working. Sometimes we do have a battle against parents because they don't want to take it away, and I'm like, but this is the goal. It's not meant for you to have it your whole life. You have some kids, they may only have it just for speech because they need speech services. So it really depends on the child and their needs.
So does it travel with their record through high school?
If they still have it from middle school going to high school, if they still have it. Like I've had some students who, we did the reevaluation, we was even deciding, do you even still need this IEP? You have some kids who are misdiagnosed, really don't need this IEP, they just needed some interventions.
And that's where the 504, those accommodations, interventions, that's where 504 comes in.
So it depends. Some students need counseling and it's in their IEP. And they have that, and that could go with them. Like one girl was graduating, we made sure she had counseling in her IEP going into high school because of things that was happening in her life.
The other thing is that I have to make sure that when they get to, now they're starting at 7th. When I taught, I should be retired, okay? but they started transitioning. And that's one of the things 14. That at age 14, you start looking at, what do you want to be when you grow up? And then that IEP looks at how do we help that student, or what do we do, what accommodations, what goals do we set for the student to meet the goal of what they want to be when they grow up.
Right, so the IEP, when it's followed correctly, it really is in place to set that child up to have a good quality of life even after they graduate, whether they are college bound, whether it's a vocational school, or whether it's perhaps a work placement where they have support, or it's employment where they have support. So yeah, all of that is an IEP.
If I'm correct, colleges don't use when your
Okay,
child has
so
an IEP
if your
in high
child
school,
has an IEP and they go
going
to
to
college,
college.
it's very different. It's not like in a school where, you call, oh, my child. No, your child has to go with their documents to that department and request accommodations themselves. You, parent, cannot do it. Even if like they have the meeting, they're not going to talk to you at all. They're going to be talking to your child the entire time.
That's why your child attends the IEP. At some
Right.
point they grow to become an advocate for
Because
themselves.
at 14, if they're not already coming to their IEP meeting at age 14, they definitely start coming to their IEP meeting to, start advocating for what it is that they need. Imam Farid, you had your hand. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, because my question was going to be on the cups what the sisters asked, because the IEP basically they've been using it as is a weapon against some of our children that really don't have major issues that makes these interventions for a specific thing, because once you get designated as one with an IEP, and especially for the school district, that's more money per child.
It is.
Than it is for the regular student.
It is.
And so the school districts that are struggling with where dollars coming from to fit their budget, they're trying to actually fulfill their budget by labeling our children, whether they really are them or not, as that, so that they can get more dollars into the budget.
But it's not the school that labels the children, it's the parent, because nothing can be done without the parent's permission.
And some
that's
parents
why
don't know.
That's why we're doing this.
Because some parents don't know that they're signing. They're signing that off. So yes, there is an overrepresentation of children of color in special education, especially boys. A lot of our students do get, I'll say, misdiagnosed. You have a lot of boys that getting diagnosed as having an emotional disability or oppositional defiant disorder. And I want to say intellectual disability, and a lot of our children don't get diagnosed with autism. Autism is viewed as a little white boy's disability. And so a lot of our children don't get diagnosed, and also, especially our girls, because girls can mask it more than boys can. And also with our children dance a lot. They could be stimming, but you looking at them as dancing. Me, I'm not. I don't think that's a. I won't get all like, oh my God, how come you're not sitting still? How come you can't do this? Or even how we talk to each other, or how we use expression when we talk to each other. I'm not viewing that as disrespect. Another teacher may view that as disrespect. Oh my gosh, she's disrespectful every day. She talks to me like this. I'm like, that's how she talks.
There was a
you know what I mean? Those are her mannerisms. She's not being disrespectful, but her interpretation is she's disrespectful. He's disrespectful. He can't be still in his seat. So therefore, they're creating this paper trail that you are a behavior problem, even though you're not a behavior problem.
Can I give this example? I had a student formed a relationship with his mom, everything. The school psychologist, I almost lost my job behind this. It was being a teenager. The school psychologist looked at him being obstinate, that he was defiant, that all those things, but he was being a 16-year-old boy. And I had to come to his defense, and I almost lost my job behind it, but what I did was save me. This is why the procedural safeguard is so important. In developing relationships with your parent, I gave her the procedural safeguard, said, go home and read it. Go home and look at it. So she used that procedural safeguard as ammunition to come back at that school psychologist, and that kind of what saved me from it. And the school psychologist said, oh, you're going against the district.
But it's like, no, that's her right as the parent, and procedural safeguards, I'm supposed to give you the procedural safeguards. I'm supposed to tell you to read them because it's for you, so you know what your rights are. But to answer your question, even for me, like, yes, it can. In some cases, it is. Sister Val and I was just talking about this. Like, again, you have some teachers or professionals, they skip the steps of RTI, of MTSS, and they want to quickly move the kid into special education when it's like, no, it's a process. How are you skipping these steps when we need the steps? We need to see your data as to why you are referring a student. And just even as African Americans, how you may talk to your kids. I've had one mom say, my kid know I will hurt him. I was like, oh my God, we were on camera. Why did she say that? I know she's not gonna hurt her kid, but we're in front of this white woman. I'm like, oh my God, she said that in front of that white woman. Oh my God, I hope she don't call, DHS on her, because I knew what she meant.
Right.
But to that other, to the psychologist, she may say, oh my gosh, she's gonna hurt. I'm like, no, she's not. Like, her son don't listen, and his mom don't play around with him. So I know she's not going to, do that. You know what I mean? But their interpretation of how we talk, how we behave. It's always aggressive. It's always, oh, you're being so aggressive, you're being disrespectful or whatever. You know what I mean? Whereas if I'm talking to students, I'm like, I know, sometimes I'm like, excuse me, am I your friend or are you talking to an adult? I'll say that and they're like, oh, excuse me, miss, you know, whatever.
Can I say the tests are culturally biased. When we're talking about lumber, we say wood. But in the WIS, it refers to lumber
and they want you to use the word lumber.
I'm backwards. They refer to it as lumber. We refer to it as wood. So geographically, if you come from a certain area, they even had where they had an old dial phone in the test. Most of these children don't know what their phone
or a dresser. They're like, wait, I don't have a dresser. Like, what are you talking about? I put myself in the closet. I don't have a dresser.
So the verbiage that are used in these tests sometimes skew the results as well.
You had another question?
Yeah, I was going to say, so you said that a lot of the times that the parents have been misdirected.
Parents have been misdirected.
They haven't had the right advocate.
Right,
because I know, like in Chester, it's 501 school districts in the state of Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. Chester was 501 out of 501. So as a result, this that you talk about, that you break it down now, they use that as ammunition in order to try to build their thing back up.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the students, in other words, I looked at my own history. It was said earlier, don't say what your thing was to try to make somebody understand, but I was that student. So in other words, based upon my behavior in the classroom, I would have had an IEP.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Absolutely.
And so, and at the same time, then you have those teachers that like you are to know that look, he's fine. He's just got to know how to get to him, right? Mm-hmm. So, but the students nowadays like that, they don't even have a chance. And they actually start to criminalize them in the process of something they're doing.
That is true.
Take it to another level even further and quicker.
It is true. So that's why it's very important to, I want to say you have teachers that look like you that can advocate for you. I want to say there have been a few times I've had to pull students to the side. I'm like, do you know where you are? Look where you are. Do you see any other kids that look like you? And they're like, no. I'm like, you can't do what they do. Even though I know you're playing, you're going to be the scapegoat all the time. And I said, listen, we're going to have this conversation, but then we never had this conversation. Because I'm like, I need you to know this. I said, you can't do what they do. Because in their eyes, you're doing it times 10, and you're going to be the one that's going to get in trouble. You cannot do what they do. Like, even my girls, I'm just like, be mindful of your tone when you're talking. That's all. Just be mindful. I know you're not trying to be disrespectful. I know you know how we're so expressive when we tell stories, and you know how you might get high up. I know you're not being aggressive. I know that. To that teacher, you are. I've had a Muslim student. He's fasting. I get an email. Oh my God, have you seen Hamza? He's so lethargic. Oh my God. And I'm just like, he's fasting. Send him to the bathroom to put some water on his face and send him back to class. He's fine. You know what I mean? You know, had I not been there, I could have went to the nurse. And then they could have called his mother, like, you're not feeding your child. And I'm like, he wants to fast. I'm like, he's been Muslim his entire life. It's Ramadan if you don't know. You know what I mean?
That's why it's important to build relationships and have that trust as a teacher, because you have students that will come to you about things that they wouldn't talk to anyone else about. Even some of our own teachers of color, you know, wind up with our students and come down on them and, you know, oh, why are you talking to me? Like, you know, and embarrass them. You know, so building relationships with them and with their parents when it comes to this process, because as you're looking at the evaluation, that was one reason why I went back, not to be certified as a school psychologist, but to be able to fully understand when I'm reading an evaluation report, I know what you're saying. And I can compare what you say as a school psychologist, because you're only with that child maybe hour, 2 hours the most. But I've had this child since September. You know, so when I look at it and I read a report and I'm looking at the scales and it's like, this is not what I'm seeing. So I have the ammunition to go back and say, wait a minute, you had them this, I know what this child is capable of doing, because I always say performance is not a true indication of ability.
And I would say also just building relationships with the psychologists, with the related service providers, because I've had psychologists come to me like, Ms. Bashir, these were the results of my testing, and we've even talked about it, like, what do you think? Like, because we've had that report, and she knows I have a good rapport with the student, and things like that, so that also helps too, having the rapport with the psychologist. And I would say even getting your child evaluated by a Black psychologist if that is something that you do want to pursue, because again, there's so many biases that are into place, and a lot of our children don't get diagnosed with autism, especially our girls. They don't. Our girls are getting labeled with behavior problems, or it's like learning disability or something. The same with our boys. Oh, they can't sit still, they can't do this. And it's like some of them, it's like you push them through this process real quick because you want them to have an IEP. And then you have some schools, they're collecting the money for these students, but they're not even using it to get the supports that the students need.
Have you noticed, this is my last question.
No problem.
Have you noticed that, we got a whole generation where we said we had babies having babies?
Uh-huh.
So have you noticed in the parents that you're meeting, that a lot of the parents are illiterate to the point that they can't comprehend what's on the paperwork that they ask them to sign?
We have some parents, like, yes, like I've run into a few, not a lot, but I've run into a few, and then sometimes even I'm like, I don't think she understands this at all. Doing like just by asking certain questions, I'm like, I don't think she read this, or I don't think she understands, or he understands. So that's when I will just go through whatever it is, just so they are clear on it. But we do run into that too.
And also we run into parents who want their children to have an IEP.
They want SSI.
They want SSI.
We run into that too.
So talk to the person next door. I had a lot of parents, oh, my son has anger issues.
And I'm like, okay.
Okay, so the paperwork that we have to fill out, they'll find a doctor that will write a prescription.
Yes.
They will find
They will tell their child to perform a certain way so that the results can come out that they need support.
You have a lot of parents that do that so they can get that Social Security. As an example, I had a student, I call him my bonus son. He came to me, they called me out of my office to come down. He was livid, where his mother had took him to the doctor. And he said, my mom want me to get this medication because she want me to go. He was livid. And we get so many, I have a student that told me, well, I have asthma real bad, or I have anger issues. And the next thing I know, I'm getting paperwork like this.
I've had students that say, Miss Bashir, I pay the bills in the house. I'm like, what do you mean? My mom uses the SSI to pay my bills. I pay the bills in my house. I've had students straight tell me that. I'm just like,
diagnosed.
Yeah. So it's like I want to say it's a lie. You have parents that want it all, but their child don't need it all. You have parents where their child needs a lot and they're fighting to get what their child needs. You have some people, they just want SSI. There are times I wanted to just throw the SSI paper in the trash because I didn't want to fill it. Because I'm like, you're not using it to get therapy outside of school or to pay for medications for your child or whatever. You're using it to live off of. So it's like there's a lot of different things into play.
That's where the stigma comes in.
Yeah.
That's exactly where the stigma comes in when you have those type of situations that parents come in and they stick with those lifers. I'm going to call them lifers. The lifers of the IEP, just for that reason.
Anybody else? Please raise your hands. Brakai?
Like the IEP, for people who don't maybe not be familiar with it, because I do have a child who's on the spectrum but are also in their early child education. That doesn't mean, and you correct me if I'm wrong, that your child has a diagnosed disability. They just may need educational support at a certain time.
Depending on your kid,
Depending on that kid.
And it doesn't mean they can't learn. It doesn't mean they're never going to learn. It doesn't mean they're never going to. And the thing is, you won't know until we support them, until we give intervention to know, like, you know what, this is working for them. Oh my gosh, they're making so much progress. Because sometimes your kid needs support. They need speech to help them articulate. They need certain resources to help them, and that can help them. I'm not going to say like, oh, they never have autism again, or they never have this problem again, but they're able to maintain and have a better quality of life than if they did not have any support at all.
And then that support comes in something that's ELL. You have a child that can really talk to you Englishly, but they're not comprehending. They're having comprehension issues because of that dual language. That doesn't qualify them for an IEP. That qualifies for them to get an ELL class.
Because like I was saying, the guy talked about it earlier, sometimes we don't recognize what trauma actually is, and children can be going through some trauma at a certain time. They just need some support.
Yep. So again, I've had students who just had counseling in their IEP, because it was rough in elementary, and and then they're getting counseling, they're getting better. I've had students where, hey, their parents went through a divorce, and that affected them so much. we had to get individual counseling for the kid because it was affecting him at school. So we had to, you know, add that. So like, yes, there are things that will happen to your child, and because of the event, it is affecting them in a certain way, but it doesn't mean it will continue to affect them all their lives. So you may have, they may have an IP for a year or 2 years. They could have it for all of elementary. They could have it just in middle school. It really just depends on how your child is responding to the support that they get.
And that's why that initial conversation that they have, that you're getting in your business, that's why that is so important, to be truthful and upfront, so that the psychologists and everybody involved know exactly what they're dealing with.
You had a question, sister?
Circling back to Sister Hamdia's comment, do you offer like PD or like a special education for teachers?
No, we specifically just focus on SPED Center training, PD, coaching, all that. It's just if the school is willing to pay for it, or if the teacher wants to pay for it, they can. Well,
I have to go off a little bit. I'm retired, but as I keep saying that, right? As a school psychologist, I could possibly do that, but I'm retired. No, no. That's when you would really get into a consulting firm that deals with more psychological issues and things of that nature, school psychologists,
or like even doing trainings on inclusive teaching practices, how to progress monitor and things like that.
Yeah. Because my first initial question to the question that you first asked was, okay, what kind of gives that teacher or whomever the experience to say, oh, this kid is not right, or this is, you know what I mean? Like, my first thing would be, if I feel like I see a student that is, like, I'm an admin, if I see a student that I feel like they are always off the chain or something, you know what I mean? I don't have any experience. It could just be like, they had too much sugar that day. So, you know what I mean? Like, to say, like, just within your initial system, who is the best person to direct that to? And then especially, like, what about the teachers don't have that training experience for special education?
Well, the observation part, this goes for all students. That's for all students. Like, if you are observing something, this is just, you just start collecting data. So when you go to your principal or your AP, or when you go to your regularly team meetings, you can say, listen, I have this kid in my classroom, da-da-da-da-da, and you have your data. And they may say, okay, continue to collect data and we'll see what happens, da-da-da-da-da. So they're not necessarily saying, oh, hey, I have a problem. You know, you have some teachers who will do that. I'm like, there's not their...
Every little thing is an issue.
Right, and it's like,
them, you know?
Again, that goes back to leadership saying, being clear, like, listen, you're not a psychologist. You don't make those types of things. You don't... And I tell parents that all the time, I am not a psychologist. I do not diagnose kids. Nobody here diagnoses children, so please don't have those conversations with parents. So that's also up to leadership to have that conversation with their team and with their staff to make sure, because that happens sometimes.
And again, you have to, that data is important. Where is this child? Is this child only doing it around this person? Is this, how frequent is he doing it? What's the duration of this behavior? You know, so that's the data that you keep. And then you ask the teachers itself, are you seeing this? Or if the teacher sees that, I don't know directly who, but we would report it to, you would report it to your counselor, and you could have a conversation with your special ed supervisor, you know, so those people would advise you on how to, or the school psychologist, if you have that kind of relationship, and say, this is what I'm seeing. And then you could actually do a BASC or some type of behavioral observation, that person to go and see what those behaviors are, how frequent it's occurring, and then come together and have conversation and then move on from there.
Yeah. So what if it's a small, let's say, private Islamic school,
okay,
and they don't have the resources to do these things? Are they still held accountable by the state to make those special?
That's that's kind of a slippery slope. Okay, this way, any school that's receiving federal funding, you have the
that's
resources.
Why private schools don't.
That's why private
don't
schools
have to, because they don't
have those resources. But
and this is something you have to do as a parent.
The state, the government,
they have
resources.
Any amount from any source of federal funding.
Right. Yeah. So this is why private institutions don't. They're not held to the same thing as a public school or a public charter school, so they don't have to. So also as parents being mindful of that, because you have some parents knowing their child has an IP and they still want to send them anyway, and I'm like, they're not going to get services there. It's not going to happen. So just honestly being for real with your situation. If you want to do that, your child's not going to get support the way they should.
Yeah, because you always have the option of going outside of your private institution and having that child evaluated.
You mentioned attendance as being one of the things that can trigger or, call for an IEP. How is that different?
Well, it doesn't qualify for an IEP. It qualifies for you to start having an MTSS meeting.
Like if they're truant or something, they're not coming to school?
They're not coming to school.
Just absence, let's say.
Well, that's
No,
truancy.
that's being that's truancy.
Yeah,
they're not coming to school.
So you can hold an MTSS meeting
to
and start
figure
some
out
RTI, start some type of intervention.
To figure out why aren't they coming
why
to
this
school.
child is missing so much school.
So, but I mean, you know why the child, let's say the child has an illness, for example.
Oh,
then,
that's something different.
Then that's
totally.
something
That's
different.
something totally
like,
different.
because I know in my old district, they had home education, like certain, I forgot what it was.
Homebound.
Homebound support.
Homebound
So like,
services.
it'll be a teacher at the school, they'll ask, oh, does anyone want to take this role? We have a kid who needs homebound. And that's how they would get support. Like it could be a situation if they're sick, they can't really leave home to come to school. They do that, but also attendance can affect and then also too that can affect if you get an IEP or not, because your child could have needs. But the thing is, you never send your child to school, so if they even had an IEP, they wouldn't get the services because they're not at school. So they may say, okay, we got to have your child start coming to school before we can even move forward with an IEP.
However, if they have there's other health impairments as well that cause for them to possibly get an IEP, because now under a certain criteria, they meet it because they're not getting the services in school, and their truancy is becoming because they have another, like I had a child who had sickle cell.
Yeah.
And that was even though academically the child was on grade level, but they had a health impairment which kept them from progressing. So they developed an IEP based on that health impairment.
Right. So it really depends on the kid, but there are those special situations where it's like, oh, it's health related or something like that would keep a kid from coming to school. Are there any? Sure, yes.
Yeah, I have a question, two questions, matter of fact. As you're doing your observation and you're collecting all this data, are there any trends that you're noticing based upon race, age, religious, or income levels that stand out to say that this originates in some of those categories, number one? And then,
no, go ahead.
And then number two, as you go through this observation period and you're looking at the data, collecting this data, and you're identifying triggers, at some point do you refer those triggers or bring those triggers to the attention of some other professionals to address those versus waiting for that 60-day
the 6 weeks
process
after
to expire, because you could have maybe identified or brought some solutions early on?
I want to say for me, like if I go back in a student's history, like for example, I had one student, she was exhibiting a lot of behaviors. It wasn't in her IEP or anything. So I always go back in a student's history just to see if something will enlighten me about, maybe something that can help me support them. So she's in 7th grade, so when I went back in her history, I noticed in 5th grade, honor roll student, all A's and B's, great comments, but then I noticed in 6th grade, she's failing. I'm noticing just the teacher comments like, oh my gosh, something's going, she's not doing well. That alone warranted me to talk to the counselor at the school. She does one-to-one counseling. I'm like, something happened to this girl, because you don't just go from honor roll to failing like that. I said the comments alone warrants some deeper digging, So I made a recommendation for her to get individual counseling, because I'm like, something else is going on with this girl here, because I said that's not natural. That don't just happen. And sure enough, I was right. Now, because of HIPAA law, she can't tell me what exactly happened, but she said, Ms. Bashir, you were so right. Something did happen to her. So I was able, but that was me going the extra mile to figure out what happened here, because her previous case manager did not. She sat in all of 6th grade without extra support. A whole year without extra support. So it does take you, the professional, to do the extra work. Because sometimes you may be like, because in SPED, everything has to be documented. So it was extra work I had to do, but I'm like, I want to make sure she's okay. So you have some teachers like, I'm not doing that extra work. That's too much. I'm not doing it. It's almost the end of the year. I'm not doing that.
The counselor is usually your first resource.
Yeah.
That you usually go back to there. And eventually, if the behaviors continue, then you could go on and possibly doing some type of intervention after you bring the parent in. And teachers as well can call for a review of the IEP and bring that to the parent's attention. And then you can also start at that point some response to intervention to see what you can do to address the issue.
Yeah.
And has the data showed any kind of trends?
Trend. Oh, you mean that trend?
I don't.
Excuse me, sorry. So we have about 2 minutes. Well, we want to be out of here about 4. So we're going to end up winding this down.
Okay. As far as trends, I want to say the behavior specialist could probably see more trends because, like, in the classroom, you're just collecting stuff you see, like academic or if it's social or something. You could see something like, oh, I noticed my boys do this. It could be gender, like I noticed my girls are this or my boys are this. But as far as like race or anything like that, probably more from the psychologist or the behavior specialist. In the back,
also pay attention to them because some of the stuff is coming from outside, like language, the verbiage they use. So if you find that happening, you know that's a trend. Everybody start wearing high top Jordans, just things like that. Just watch the behaviors.
What's your question in the back?
Is any of the owners of the main school in here in the room? That question, how much is the tuition there?
I think you probably gotta ask them.
Individual school.
Oh, okay.
Because when we talk about this stuff, right, especially the disconnection that we have with faculty amongst our people, and you know that there is a connection with these diagnoses of IEPs and medication that these kids probably going to end up down Kensington or something like that. You know what I'm saying? We gotta really get serious about the private school conversation. I know there was something that Jay-Z was doing, and he's pursuing in Philadelphia of $300 million for vouchers for private school, whereas a lot of people in our city, there's a backlash, or that's going to take away from the public school, that's going to take away from that. But we got to understand that this money can be a real big opportunity for us to get a hand on the education of our kids in our community. So when we talk about educating ourselves on those type of things, and a lot of the pushback, and I just want to be vocal on this because I know on social media, stuff like that, people, they just say stuff, well, they only giving $10,000 a year, how a person going to take care of the other head? That's not a true number. When my wife, her family owns a private school uptown called Excelsior School of Philadelphia, and that $10,000 would definitely take care of a kid's school year, and that money can do a lot for our private institutions, where a lot of people look at it like private school is about being uppity up, wearing a blazer, and going to no. It's an opportunity for us to reapproach education how we see fit for our people and stop leaving it in the hands of another race. So I just wanted to.
No, that's a good point.
As it relates to the topic with these IEPs, because a lot of the misdiagnosis, a lot of it is business at the end of the day. It's a business thing. Because if I'm going to get double the amount per kid, if they got a label on them, come on, let's do that.
Yeah.
Especially if it's each person.
Right, and it's just like with our private institutions, just making sure we do have the staff who can support our students. I think that's the biggest thing with the private institutions, because I mean, I went to public school and I went to Islamic school growing up, and I love both experiences, it's just with Islamic schools, just making sure you have the faculty who can actually, I'll say the faculty and the expertise to help all students. You're able to support all students and have that support and pay for that support to come to your school if you do need it. Because sometimes a private institution may be a better environment for your child to fully flourish and to fully thrive in their education, because they're able to reach their fullest potential because they don't have these distractions that they would have in a public school or even in a charter school. Oh, 1 second, email from Reed. So this is just a feedback survey. You can take a picture of this slide. You can fill it out later. That's why I also put the link down there. And then also, this is the freebie that we're going to give you guys. These are it's a one page of just common special education acronyms, just so you know what they are. So if you hear PTRE, or if you hear IEP, you hear FBA, if you hear all those types of things, you know what they stand for. So again, you can take a picture of this, and you can come up if you want. Answer your question. Ask your question.
So the question is, and then I got a comment. The question is, so when a lot of our students that are coming back from the public schools, coming to the Islamic schools, are the IEPs supposed to come to the private school?
The parent can bring it, but if they're not honest to tell you, like even when they're charter school, there are some parents, they won't say that their child has an IEP. Okay. So when me being a supervisor, when I go to do the billing, I see this kid pop up, I'm like, I'm reaching out, who's this kid, what grade is he in? Because I need to call mom, does your child have an IEP? And if she says yes, then I need to make sure, oh my God, let me get this IEP. I gotta find out what they're supposed to get, what type of services, so we can do what we need to do for that student. But like with a private school, a parent may not always be honest to tell you they have an IEP. They can say, listen, my child has an IEP, and you can support them the best way you can, but technically you don't have to.
Yeah, thank you for telling us that, because what we've experienced is they'll bring the child and have problems in the public school, and then they'll bring it to the Islamic school without telling what their real deal was. And then when they had a problem there, they try to make it like it's your problem. They actually had a problem.
Right. Sometimes they will not be honest to share that information. But I always tell parents, listen, if your child has an IEP, well, no matter where they go, let them know that they have an IEP and let them know what's working for your child.
But also don't have the expectations that that private school has the resources to support your child as well. You know, you bring it to their attention that this exists, but your expectations of, well, how are you going to do this and how are you going to accommodate, it usually doesn't happen because the resources aren't there.
It's a private institution.
We need your expertise, though, to help us in the private school side. Sure.
Inshallah. She'll come. Yes. Excuse me, 1 second. Last one.
Last one.
Good.
A lot of times in a private, in Islamic Bible school setting, when those children come to the Islamic school and the parents don't say anything and they do have IEPs, what happens in the classroom, that behavior starts coming out.
Yes.
And if you call that parent in, you have the right conversation with the person, because the parents do try to tell them, oh, this happened since they came to this, I've had this just happened since
This just started.
They like me see y'all. Not me, I know how you feel. Please take this because I'm not taking it home.
Right. Right.
So what was going on before?
And if,
that's when you find out.
right. Yeah, you do have to have the conversation. I just tell you a quick story. I've had a student, the mom, he transferred he was going to school in New Jersey. He came back to New York. Mom didn't tell us he had an IEP. I go to do billing. Yes, I go to do billing. I see he has an IEP. I talked to mom, finally got hold of mom. He had an IEP. We didn't even have his placement. He's on 3 medications. Like, I learned all this stuff, but I had to hunt mom down. It was to the point I pulled the student, like, what is your mom's number? Give me the number that works. And what school did you go to before you came here? Because I had to call that school to get their IEP and then also learn information about them. So we know how we needed to support him at our school. So thank you all so much for the presentation.
We are concluding the School Fair Expo for this year. We want to thank you all for coming. Inshallah, we'll make the dua. Inshallah, for the road. Thank you, ma'am. Please. Okay, ma'am, free. One thing real quick, please. I want to mention one thing. South Jersey Halal Meat. What's your exact location, brother?
237 Ogden Station Road, Deptford, New Jersey.
237 Ogden Station Road in Deptford, New Jersey. That's one of our sponsors. We mentioned him in the beginning. Okay, South Jersey Halal Meats in Deptford. And we have these surveys. Please, they're not very long. Please take a survey to help us get better at what we're doing. Inshallah, you can express your opinions here on the survey. I have them here. And Imam Bashir, where'd you put them?
Over there.
Right? And with that, inshallah, Imam Fareed will make dua and we'll leave.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله العالمين والعصر إنا لفي خسر الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر.
Does anybody want any chocolate?